Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Blues go to make the line change. Glance pass ahead to Broberg. With Neighbors going to the goal. Neighbors! He scores! Jake Neighbors, the overtime game winner. Bring out the Zamboni. Hofer's going to get an assist. And the Blues beat the Islanders 1-0 in a shutout performance by Joel Hofer and a game winner by Jake Neighbors. What a pass from Hofer. What a pass from Broberg, and a great tip by Neighbors.
You guys entertained? You guys entertained yet? Because I'm liking these St. Louis Blues here in 2024. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center. The Blues are at Enterprise Center today for morning skate.
Of course they are.
But we're here.
Son of a...
Ready to go for
I wanted
Blues
to see
season.
Broberg.
Ferrari wanted to hug him.
Oh, yeah. The way this season's going, he's going to get a kiss at some point.
Okay, relax, man.
Whoa.
Relax.
What, man?
We're going to
I'm
have to keep
happy.
you at least 60 feet away from Broberg here pretty
No, it's
soon.
6 feet, okay?
I think I'm in. I think they've hooked me.
Think you're in.
I enjoy watching this hockey team. I don't know how good they are. They scored 1 goal last night, and it required overtime to get there. But
And a goalie pass.
they're fun to watch. Philip Broberg is a really good hockey player. I'm enjoying this opportunity to watch Zach Bolduc on a night-in, night-out basis. I think Dylan Holloway, Braden Shin, and Matthew Joseph is like the ideal third line in the NHL right now. Forget for a rebuilding team. For a contender, I think that line could work as a third line for a contender. Defensively, this team is much better than they were a year ago. Joel Hofer, hot damn, dude. What a game for him last night. A shutout for him in this early stage of the season. But let's begin with Philip Broberg. I think you can officially say he's a top 5 move by Doug Armstrong. I know we've seen 5 games by this young man in a Blues uniform. I don't care. He's playing 19 minutes a night. He's already had a point in each of the first 5 games of the season. He is the first Blues defenseman to have a point in each of the first 5 games of the season since Alex Pietrangelo did so in 2017. He's only the 3rd defenseman to do that in the history of the St. Louis Blues organization. If he does it again in the next game, I believe there's 2 other defensemen in the last 20 years that have had 6 straight games with a point, regardless of if it was to start the season or at any point during the regular season. Philip Broberg's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
I think the top 4 moves right now for Doug Armstrong are Braden Shin, in no order, Pavel Buchnevich, Jay Bouwmeester, and what am I missing? Ryan O'Reilly. Those are the top 4 moves. I think for 5th right now, he's competing with Maroon and Brouwer as the 2 other that I would throw up there into that conversation. I'm open to other suggestions. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line if you want to do so today. YouTube.com/101ESPN-STL is the other places you could go. I'm ready to make the case for Philip Broberg, though, Alex. This looks like a top 4 defenseman to me, and they acquired him via an offer sheet.
Well, you want me to make it more solidified for you to where you're just not ever jumping off of that lifeboat? Because Grant Francis and I were doing digging on this last night. Philip Broberg and Justin Falk are 2 of 5 defensemen in the NHL who have not been on the ice for a goal against at 5-on-5.
Damn.
So there are only 5 guys in the NHL who have not been scored against defensemen at 5-on-5. Now, Falk has been scored against on the penalty kill a couple of times, on the power play a couple of times. Philip Broberg is one of 3 defensemen who has not been on the ice for a goal against. The other 2 guys, Zach Bogosian from the Minnesota Wild and Nils Lundqvist from the Dallas Stars. Here's the difference. He's averaging almost 3 more minutes per game than those 2 players. Those 2 guys are third-pair defensemen. Philip Broberg is now averaging over 19 minutes a game. That's second potential top-pair defenseman right there. So it's not just the offense. The thing with Broberg that everybody's going to go to immediately is he's got 5 points in 5 games. That's incredible. And it is.
That's what I went to.
Yeah, I like that.
But, guys, defensively is the part that's been most impressive for me. This guy he's very good in his own end. Like, it's It's not a fluke
I'm
right
giddy
now.
talking about him. Like, this is crazy to me that he's able to do this.
It's because Blues fans have been waiting for this for the longest time of that top pair left-handed defenseman once again since Jay Bomeister. For a while there, it stung Blues fans because Vince Dunn left and he was a top pair guy. Jake Wallman left and he was a top pair defenseman and then was actually a forward, and then they just used him as a defenseman. But it still stung for a year. But Philip Broberg steps in for a guy that everybody in Edmonton was like, yeah, he might have top pair potential, but we just haven't seen it. You haven't seen it because he's been behind Matthias Ekholm and Darnell Nurse and Evan Bouchard. And NHL Edge put this out earlier today. Broberg has the 4th highest max skating speed in the entire NHL, and it's the 2nd best among defensemen in Jake McCabe.
My God.
He's an incredible skater. His hockey sense is so good because he can see the ice and make plays with his feet just as well as he can with moving the puck up the ice. And then offensively, he's not afraid to jump in. This is an all-around defenseman right now that you haven't even seen play 100 games in the NHL. To me, it already is a top 5 move. Like, you could put him in there however you want to order it because this is what this team was lacking for the last 4 years, and they finally found someone who's impacting these games.
And I think the part that has really amazed me is, look, I was believing what you were selling me on because you were watching the NHL playoffs last year more than I was when the Blues were sitting at home.
That's what I'm here for,
but
man.
I expected there to be learning curves with Broberg. You know, I agreed that I think he already had a better player than Torrey Krug on the ice when we talked about that at the beginning of the season. I expected to see some learning curves, some mistakes from Broberg, especially on the defensive end, or maybe he has a pinch that goes wrong and ends up leading to a 2-on-1 and a goal goes the other way. It's been flawless through 5 games for Philip Broberg. Now, there's probably going to be mistakes that will come, but I thought this was going to be more of those, okay, Drew Bannister's going to have to work with him. This is going to be kind of a development year for Philip Broberg. This doesn't look like a development year. This looks like the breakout year for Philip Broberg. If you're not counting last year's run in the playoffs, he's been impressive. I mean, everything that you said, defensively, he's been sound. He's got some feistiness to his game, which is nice to see. And he's able to get up and join the rush and play in the offensive zone as well with the points that he's putting up so far this season.
All right. I'm going to give you a list. You ready, Alex?
Oh, my God. Are you going to play the game that I played with Grant last night?
Here's a list of defensemen in the last decade that have had at least 19 or 18 minutes of ice time per game at age 23 or younger, and they finished the year as a positive on the ice, plus minus that is positive. I'm not like this huge qualifier, and at least 40 points, right? 40 points, positive on the ice, played at least 18 minutes a night at Broberg's age.
Okay.
Thomas Harley, Quinn Hughes, Rasmus Dahlin, Miro Heiskanen, Keandre Miller, Cale Makar, Seth Jones, outlier there. Matthew Dumba.
Yikes.
Ivan Provorov, outlier there. He ended up being a good player, though. Erik Karlsson, Drew Doughty. That's the entire list in the last 20 years. That is what, right now, Philip Broberg is on pace to do. He's on pace to shatter those numbers. But that was just to get, like, there's potential for, the rubber band effect. It comes back a little bit as we continue along here. I'm not expecting him to get a point in every single game this season, but I feel like 40 is very much on the table for him at this point. In fact, I'm expecting it. That means 35 points over the course of the next 75-plus games. I think that's likely for Philip Broberg after he's seeing him in the first 5 games of the year. I think he's going to be a plus by the end of the season for the Blues. I had high expectations for him. I was hopeful that he would become a good player. Before the season, though, to your point, T-Bone, I was anticipating some real growing pains here. I said I'm not sure that we can automatically assume he's going to be better than what Torrey Krug was for the Blues last year. And that was not a shot against Philip Broberg. It was just I don't want to go into a season expecting too much from a young player. I think we do that a lot. I think we're seeing that a little bit with Jake Neighbors right now. It was a good goal for him last night. It's been a slow start to the season from a goal-scoring perspective. I'm not out on Jake Neighbors. If he scores 20-plus this year, I think that's a really good season coming off of what he was last year. But we see this in the Cardinal side of things, too. We expect too much from their young players. They don't quite live up to expectations, and then, boom, it's a failure. That guy stinks now. No, he just wasn't a superstar. That's okay. Sometimes you can be a good player without reaching superstar status at a young age, and that's a success. Dude, I'm done putting any qualifiers on Philip Broberg. I'm done trying to tamp down the excitement. You guys should be excited about this. The Blues appear to have a legitimate top 4 defenseman that they acquired for, a second-round pick in the offseason. This is one of the best moves that any team made this entire offseason.
So much so that Edmonton Oilers fans are so upset that they took Grant and I's tweet from last night and they're putting it all over Reddit. That's how frustrated people are right now. Because
they should be, dude.
Yes.
They let this guy go for a second-round pick. Yeah. They should have been falling like head over heels for this guy.
And they're playing terrible.
Yeah, here's the thing, too. Like, you look at Broberg and you're like, yeah, he hasn't put up points in the NHL. Man, look at what he did in the AHL last season. And I know it's the AHL, but Barbashev was this way, to where he put up a ton of points in the AHL, but the NHL, he played a different role. And Broberg was that. Broberg gets to the NHL with Edmonton, and you're a third-pair defenseman. You don't get power play time because you're playing behind Evan Bouchard. You're not getting 5-on-5 time because you're playing behind Matthias Ekholm and Darnell Nurse. But in the AHL last season, he had 38 points in 49 games. It was a plus 11. And Joey brought this player up last night on the postgame show, and you're not comping him to him, so please understand. I know I get the comp label, but we're not doing that.
I'm probably comping to him, but okay.
Joey said that it does remind him a little of how he plays the style like Miro Heiskanen with Dallas, because he moves the puck well. He's able to get out of his own zone.
That list.
Listen to the first season of Miro Heiskanen, and this is the difference between Broberg and Heiskanen. Heiskanen was 19 when he got into the NHL.
My God.
And he played 82 games.
Holy crap.
And he was averaging 23 minutes a night and ended that season as a minus 14. What I'm saying is that's a guy whose first taste of the NHL was your 82 games and you're a top pair defenseman. Philip Broberg's first taste of the NHL was 3 full seasons of, don't make a mistake, because if you do, you're going to the AHL. You're not a top pair guy. We'll put you on the third pair. You're not a penalty kill guy, so we'll put you at 5-on-5. You don't get power play time. Go to the AHL. Now you are getting a full season with confidence from a coaching staff that looks at Broberg and says, you are a top pair, top 4 defenseman for us. You are playing in every scenario that we need you to. And look at what happens when you give a kid confidence.
And to that point on Miro Heiskanen, his true breakout season was when he was 23 years old, which is the age that Philip Broberg is currently. Heiskanen, as a 23-year-old, had 11 goals, 73 points, which was more than double his points production from any previous season. He was a plus 12 on the ice that year, played 26 minutes per night for the Dallas Stars that season for a team that I believe ended up, in the conference finals that year against the Vegas Golden Knights. And he was a big part of that. His breakout campaign is part of what led to the Dallas Stars taking that next step as a team. I don't think you're going to see 23 minutes a night for Philip Broberg. I think right now, and I've been arguing against this, so I will admit when I'm wrong on things. We're going to be doing a lot of that today, coming off of what Drew Bannister decided to do last night. We'll get to that here in a little bit. But I think Philip Broberg and Justin Falk have such chemistry right now, and this is where I will give credit to Drew Bannister. He knew, don't mess with this. This is a good thing. Let's leave it as is. I got to give credit to Bannister. I got to give credit to Ryan Suter. That pairing, the way that they performed last night, made me forget that I was calling for Broberg to be bumped up to that top pair by the end of that game last night. I think Suter is more than capable right now. I don't think he's a long-term answer as a top pair defenseman. But for right now, if you need somebody to fill in for a bit, I think Suter's capable of doing that. And I would leave Philip Broberg on this second pair as well.
I would too. I mean, look, again, they haven't been scored against at 5-on-5. I don't break that pairing up. Plus, now you have a little bit of an identity for both pairs, because Falk and Broberg can be that 200-foot D pair, but also play in the offensive zone. Colton Parayko and Ryan Suter did a really good job of eliminating the Islanders' top line last night with Bo Horvat. And Ryan Suter did this last year. Like, yes, he's 41 years old, and yes, the guy probably isn't going to play much longer in the NHL. But Ryan Suter played over 700 minutes with Miro Heiskanen last season with the Dallas Stars. That's their top guy. And Suter played on his offhand with him and was actually fairly good on the defensive zone. So he can absolutely play this way with Colton Parayko. All you got to do is give it a little bit of a leash. And right now, if this nagging injury with Nick Leddy, this is the best case scenario for the Blues. They look at Nick Leddy. If Leddy wants to get back in, it's like, we need you at 100%. Because when you step back in, we want to make sure that you're on the ice and you're good. Because we've got the guys that can cover you right now. Suter and Parayko with Broberg and Falk, that's a perfectly adequate top 4 to get you through a stretch of 5 to 10 games.
I'm curious if you guys feel the same way that I do. And by the way, we'll get into in about 5 minutes or so if the Blues can play that kind of a game consistently, because that's the kind of game you don't expect to win very often. 1-0 in overtime, that's not sustainable. But can they win these low-scoring games? We'll get into that here in just a minute. Do you guys feel like you were sold the wrong thing on Ryan Suter? And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying this in a positive. I feel like I expected Ryan Suter to come in and look like he's on his last legs, look like he is totally diminished as a player. And to be kind of a jerk, and on our experiences with Ryan Suter, it's been the opposite. Ryan Suter's been a great dude to talk to, and listen, it's very limited. I don't know what he's like inside of a locker room, but for us, he's been great, and we've heard nothing of the sort. It's very early. We've heard nothing about that in the locker room either. Ryan Suter last year, I mean, you just look at it, what he did with Dallas. You mentioned the ice time, Alex, and who he was playing with. He ended up as a plus 14 on a really good Dallas team. It's not like he was a huge hindrance to what they were trying to do there. Only 17 points. Sure, he's not a points producer. I don't expect him to be at this point in his career. He was playing 21 minutes a night or 19 minutes a night last year. This guy's helpful. This is a really nice signing for the Blues.
Look at his time in Dallas. I mean, his entire time in Dallas has been a net positive, playing 20-plus minutes a night, and they've been in the playoffs every single season that he has been a part of that team.
Why is this guy somebody that is like persona non grata around the NHL? It doesn't make sense to me.
It felt like you were being forced to believe that Ryan Suter was a bad teammate. And look, the narrative behind it when you get bought out twice is immediately, the guy's a bad guy. Suter even told us, he's like, look, I'm a very honest person, to where if I believe that I deserve an opportunity over somebody who's not capitalizing on it, I'm going to let that team know. And Ryan Suter believes he's a guy that can do something in the NHL, and he's been doing it for over 1,400 games. I don't get that vibe at all with him. I mean, and just from people that you talk to around the team, and I've been in the locker room maybe like twice so far this season, you don't get the vibe that things are tense. Ryan Suter, I mean, yesterday they posted a picture. He's walking in with like 3 or 4 of the younger guys going into the game. Ryan Suter understood his role, and here's the other factor into it. We all know Doug Armstrong is a very honest individual.
Yep.
He is going to tell it to you bluntly. Do you think that conversation with Ryan Suter was like, hey, Ryan, we'd like you to be here. You know, you do whatever you like. It's cool. No, I guarantee it was, Ryan, you're coming to a team where you might play, you might not play. It's going to dictate on how you perform on the ice. And Ryan Suter, a guy who's 1,400 games in the NHL, understood the assignment.
Fun game last night. Blues win in overtime 1-0 against the New York Islanders. Ryan Suter was a big part of that. Philip Broberg was a massive part of that. Also got to give credit to Joel Hofer. And that's what we're going to get into coming up next. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You can check us out on YouTube, as always, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. I don't think that anybody expects to win that kind of a game consistently, 1-0. But can the Blues be a team this year that does win more low-scoring games? We'll talk about that, what it means for them long-term next year on BK and Ferrario.
Take the fast lane home weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. with Anthony Stalter, Jamie Rivers, and Carrie Davis on 101 ESPN. 2 former pros and 1 average Joe. The fast lane is driven by Scrap Mart Metals Recycling. Send us a pic of you repping your Blues gear, and you could be chosen as our Blues Fan of the Week and win a pair of tickets to a Blues game. No purchase necessary. Must be a resident of Missouri or Illinois. Get entered to be our Blues Fan of the Week now at 101ESPN.com. More Blues talk, more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
He was great. I mean, they were throwing a lot of pucks at the net from everywhere, and he was all over the place and keeping it out of the net.
Flick off to the blue line. Shot coming on from Dobson, and Ofer will make that save. Get it in front for Brandon Saad. And then Shen gets, or rather Holloway knocked down as he races to the net, and the Islanders will break it out. Nelson to Barzal. Into the middle, back to Nelson. Shoots it. Blocker save. Blues have to defend now as Horvat comes in on Justin Falk. Falk goes over to the far side as the puck comes into the middle. And a shot on by Polak. Hofer will make the save.
That's what it sounded like last night right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Blues win 1-0 in overtime against the New York Islanders to advance to 3-2 on the season. A winning record thus far. They continue along their season with Carolina tomorrow night. A 6 o'clock puck drop. Alex will have your pregame right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Alex, I'm not expecting the Blues to win 1-0 games consistently. Nobody can.
Oh, man, that would be great to have like 82 shutouts.
It'd be awesome. But it's not realistic.
A lot of boring hockey.
I do think, though, and I'm starting to wonder, can this team be one that wins more low-scoring games? Last year, you look at the teams that were the best when winning low-scoring games. So 2 or fewer goals scored, highest winning percentages in the NHL. The Rangers were the best team in the league in those scenarios. They ended up going 11-17 in those games, which tells you they were well below 500 in these kinds of games, and they were the best team in the league when scoring 2 or fewer goals. It's really hard to win that way. But they won 11 such games, which is remarkable. Vancouver was up there, 8-17 when scoring 2 or fewer goals. Dallas, the team that we just brought up with Ryan Suter, he's familiar with these kinds of games. They won 6 of them. They ended up going 6-17. Washington also won 11 such games. Philadelphia won 9 such games. Nashville and Vegas were up there with like 7 or 8 of them. Alex, when you look at the way that the Blues won yesterday, do you think this is a team, given what they have structurally, given how they've improved defensively, and given what they have right now in both Joel Hofer and Jordan Binnington, can this be a team that wins low-scoring games more often than they have over the last few years?
Yes, they can. Because of that last thing you said, your goaltenders. Your goaltenders keep you in hockey games. There are going to be a larger portion of games where you're going to have to score 3 or 4 goals because mistakes happen. Bounces take place. But just like we talked about in the first 2 games of the season when the Blues came from behind and we're like, man, that you can't do that all year, but what a weapon to have for you all season to know, like, hey, we're down by 2. We've done this before. Now, go to what just took place last night, because Bannister said with Curbs in the coaches show yesterday, this is going to be a game where we may not lead until the 58-minute mark. But he said we have to be patient because the Islanders are a team that you cannot try and take chances with because they'll make you pay. And they proved to everybody last night that they could play the patient brand of hockey. Go back to the Ken Hitchcock era. That's how the Blues always played. If you talked to anybody who went up against the Blues in that era of Ken Hitchcock, the opponents would always say, and I'll never forget because I talked with Chad Johnson, the former goaltender, when he was a Blue about this, and he said, I hated playing the Blues as a goalie because it bored the hell out of me. He said, I'd be in between the pipes, and nothing would take place until the third period when a turnover would happen, and then they would strike.
To that point, in 2015, the Blues were 17-23 when they had 2 or fewer goals.
Yeah.
Half of their games, they scored 2 or fewer goals in. This was a really good team that season, and they won 17 of them.
You were 29-1 last season when you led after 2 periods. So if you keep things tied or keep things low scoring, you absolutely give your chance to have success because this offense we're seeing, it's building chances. The problem right now is converting. It's the first 2 weeks of the season. When you're 2 months in and your offense has a little bit more chemistry and you're building off of those chances and you finally break through and start getting some bounces going your way, now you know your goaltender can lock things down. it's a brand of hockey that you don't want to play all season because, man, it's taxing and it hurts guys. It gets injuries a lot when you're blocking shots. You blocked 22 shots last night, I think. It takes a lot on your team to play this way. But to know that you can win as long as you're close, that's the part that the Blues have to look at with 3 of their wins this season and say, man, we're in every single game that we play.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. This one comes from a 314. Can you win like that? Of course. Are you asking them to play 75 low-scoring games, though? No, of course not. Every game, you do what it takes to win that specific game, no matter how many goals are scored. Weird topic. Let me explain why I think that this is an important conversation to have, at least in my opinion. You can disagree with that, and that's totally fine. I don't think this is going to be a great offense this year.
I agree.
I don't get the sense watching this team night in, night out that they are going to be a team that finishes top 10 in goals scored. I think you're going to have to win a lot of games that are low scoring. Like you get to 3 or fewer goals. Can you suppress goals on the other side to the point where that becomes a way that you can win? Last year they couldn't. The last couple of seasons, frankly, this team has been in a place where defensively they can't win games like that. They have to win not shootouts in terms of like getting to overtime and then having a shootout, but they have to win games where the goal scoring is really high, right?
They have to win like pond hockey games, essentially.
Exactly. This year, I think a way that they can potentially win regularly is with these boring, low-scoring affairs where a couple of breaks go in your direction. It's not a sexy way to win, but it can be a consistent way to win if you play structured, good defense with great goaltending. Mm-hmm. And I think after watching them for a few games, especially what we saw last night, what we've seen so far from Broberg, what we've seen from their 2 goaltenders, this is the first year really since they had that one season with where they traded for Nick Leddy. What was that, 2022?
Yeah. Where
I think they're capable of winning that way. So that's why I think it's an important conversation to have right now, is because I find that to be really interesting. They might have built a different style of team than what we've seen in recent years.
You've built it from the backup. You've built it from your goaltenders to your defensemen, where, I mean, it's not just last night. Like, I understand the Minnesota Wild game, there were 4 goals scored and a goalie goal win in, blah, blah, blah. You went 16 minutes in the second period without giving up a shot on goal against Minnesota. Vegas, you shut them down in the third period with the exception of that early goal. The San Jose Sharks game did not get a shot on goal for 12 minutes in the third period. The Seattle Kraken game did not get a shot on goal in 15 minutes in the second period. You've seen this defense eliminate the opposition. Whether they've been leading or trailing, they've eliminated the opposition. Their problem has been offense. And also, I go back to preseason. You played 1 game with these guys, and we've talked about the line juggling. You kept it consistent last night, and you built on your offense. Was it only 1 goal that scored? Yes, but it's a confidence booster. But to play this style, the reason that, yeah, you know what, if they wanted to, they could win this game for the next 74 games because of their goaltending. I've been looking at this, and I gave you guys that bold prediction in the early portion of the season that I think this team could compete for the Jennings Trophy. Mm-hmm. With Bennington and Joel Hofer, and I'd have to look and see where all the goaltenders are at right now in save percentage, but those 2 guys can do what Joel Hofer did last night on a consistent basis. So I went through the last 10 years of teams that goaltenders won the Jennings Trophy. With the exception of the COVID-shortened season, every team that has won the Jennings Trophy had 100 or more points. And 5 of those teams, their team offense was bottom half in the National Hockey League. You can win by playing defense and having great goaltending if your offense isn't great. The difference is you're not saying the offense isn't great with 31-year-olds. You're saying the offense isn't great with 24, 25-year-olds that are young, that are still trying to figure it out on the ice.
Yeah, and I think right now, early on, to me, I still don't think the offense is going to figure it out. But if you want to get back to, like, I mean, you mentioned the year they had Nick Leddy. Why could that team win in that style and win it consistently? They still had a pretty good power play at that point. They still had Perron that was on the roster, if I remember correctly. They had a power play that they could go to. Correct. Hey, we're not going to score at 5-on-5. We're going to score, though, if you're going to go into the box. If you're going to go to the box, we're going to make you pay. We'll see if the power play can get to that level. I think it looks better than it did a year ago. I still think they're missing that shot, but I look at their offense and look, defensively, this has to be the way they play. I mentioned when we started the season, it felt like, to me, looking at them on paper, paper, they were going to have to win the Iowa football style, which is slugfest. We're just going to keep it close, low scoring. We're going to do everything right structurally, and we're going to make sure that we don't make the mistakes, and we'll make you pay if you do.
They're a counterpunch team. They're not a team that wins because they're the one that's forcing the action. They're waiting for you to make a mistake, and then they capitalize.
And the reason they're a counterpunch team is because, like, I look at their top 9 right now, they don't have goal scorers. They have one probably elite goal scorer. I wouldn't even call him elite. Just a really good goal scorer in Jordan Kyrou. They've got an elite centerman in Robert Thomas. And then you've got Booch that we'll see what his total is now that he's playing center. He's almost like an X factor here. The rest of it is they just got a bunch of role players that are up there in their top 9. And that's not a bad thing for this team because they are in this transition, in this retool. But that's why, for me, they're going to have to win defensively because they just are not going to have the 5-on-5 offense.
I think the offense will come. I think the offense right now is still uncomfortable because there's been so many new faces on so many different lines. If you get what you get last night where you stick with it, and I liked 3 of those 4 lines last night of how they just played offensively, the offense is going to come because they were generating chances. They had more scoring chances and high danger chances than the Islanders last night.
Wasn't me, but it still felt a lot to the outside.
It felt like they were trying to get more to the inside compared to that Minnesota Wild game. It was perimeter hockey, you're right, but there was more of a net front presence. I mean, Jake Neighbors nearly had a goal that was robbed by Ilya Sorokin standing on the doorstep. That felt more in line of progressing away from the transition speed through the neutral zone hockey and felt more closer to, hey, we're going to get sustained zone time and we're going to score off of the cycle. And that's a confidence booster that you can try and build off of with the next game.
It is worth noting right now their shooting percentage is 6.5% at 5-on-5. And the reason why I bring that up, it's kind of like batting average on balls in play in Major League Baseball. Typically you look for guys that are like at 200 or whatever, and that's going to normalize over time. Most players end up in that 300 range for their batting average on balls in play by the end of the season, or somewhere thereabouts. The Blues are going to be closer to like 8 or 9% on their shooting percentage by the end of the year. That's what you'd expect, at least. That's kind of league average. Last year, they were at 8.5%, and that was one of the lower teams in the league in terms of their shooting percentage. Shooting from far away leads to that. You're going to have a lower percentage of those shots that connect. But as they progress here, I do expect the offense to be better than what we've seen so far early on this season. I do not think that it's necessarily going to be top 10 in the league, though. No. So I think it's always good to see what kind of a team that you have early in the season to kind of feel things out, because then you start playing towards that style. It becomes almost a like reverse engineering of who you are as a team. If you know we need to win games this way, then suddenly you can gear your style, you can gear your structure towards that kind of a game, and you know who you are as a team. So you play that way, you end up winning games that way, you have confidence that you can win games that way. I think the Blues are getting closer and closer towards that identity.
And real quick, because I know we got to get to break, it feels a little different than their defensive mindset from a year ago, right? Remember early on last year, it was like, hey, just take all the shots you want, baby. We're going to be in our own zone. We're going to block. We're going to make it tough, and we're going to hope we make the one mistake. We're going to break out. To your point, they are generating more shots this year. Absolutely. And still playing a better sound defensive game.
I think this is a better team than last year was.
Agreed.
I agree.
I don't know how much
I don't know if the point total will represent
95 to 96 points better.
Ooh,
3 or 4 more points like Alex predicted.
He's Alex Ferrario, that's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, we just witnessed the AL postseason game that we've been waiting for, and that right there is why the Dodgers have Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Coverage of 101 ESPN is presented by Onder Law Injury Lawyers. GetJim.com. Sunday, it's an NFL triple header. Game 1, Vikings and Lions. Game 2, Rams and Raiders. Game 3, Steelers and Jets. Coverage starts Sunday morning at 11. Your destination for the NFL in St. Louis is 101 ESPN. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Neighbors Nets OT winner. I'm Bradford Bruns with a Sports Center update powered by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Jake Neighbors made his first goal of 2024-25 count last night, scoring barely 2 minutes into overtime as St. Louis edged the New York Islanders 1-0. Netminder Joel Hofer's second start this season, flawless 34 saves plus an assist on that extra session tally. Drew Bannister's squad will host Carolina tomorrow, 6 p.m. puck drop. ALCS Cleveland rallies past Luke Weaver's Yankees to claim Game 3, 7-5, and L-Wise Los Angeles blitzes those Mets 10-2. Jack Flaherty could close it out at Citi Field today. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
We're back to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Judge, line drive, right field, hit well, and it is up and out! Judge has homered! The game is tied at 3! Incredible!
A home run to Kerry Carpenter.
That ball's hit well, deep center field. Way back there, Giancarlo Stanton! A home run! Judge and Stanton go back to back! Swung on, hit high, hit deep to left! There she goes! How about that? A walk-off, two-run home run to the bleachers and left by David Fry, and the magical 2024 season is not done by any means.
That's what it sounded like last night on Turner Sports and on the Cleveland Guardians radio network with Alex and T-Bone on BK. We're broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. Alex, that was the AL game that we were looking for this postseason, because so far I don't really feel like we had an individual game that I will look back 10, 15, 20 years from now and be like, that was the one that you remember from the postseason. I think we've had some of those in the National League side of things. The National League postseason has been super entertaining. The individual games so far have been great. The American League has left a little to be desired. That one, though, that took the cake. Yankees down 3-1 in the top of the 8th inning. 2 outs. Soto walks. Clase enters the game to face Aaron Judge. Classic matchup, right? Best reliever, best hitter. Let's see what you guys have. It's like in the World Baseball Classic when we saw Shohei Ohtani against Mike Trout to end the game. You couldn't have asked for anything more. That's what this was on the American League CS side of things. Judge homers, ties the game. Stanton homers in the next at-bat, gives the Yankees the lead. Yankees added an insurance run in the top of the 9th inning. Feels like this is it. Yankees just took a commanding 3-1 lead in the ALCS. They're going to the World Series. But wait, Luke Weaver, who has been one of the best relievers in Major League Baseball for the last month and a half now, pitches in the bottom of the 9th inning. Nobody on, 2 outs, 2 strikes to Lane Thomas. Down to their final strike with the Yankees, again, about to take a commanding lead in the ALCS. Double. Lane Thomas, T-Bone's boy, puts him back in the contention. Next at bat, Noel homers. He ties the game, and then Fry with 1 on, 2 outs, bottom of the 10th inning, wins the game for Cleveland. That's all she wrote. Boom, Cleveland right back in this series. We've been waiting for that kind of a game, man. Postseason baseball is the best when you've got a game like that where a team feels like its back is against the wall and they find a way to punch back. There were so many great moments in that one. Aaron Judge seemingly having his moment that he needed in the postseason. Giancarlo Stanton, who is apparently one of those guys that we talked about yesterday that raises his game to another level in the postseason. He has an OPS of like 1,000 in his postseason career now. and then the Guardians finding a way to battle back. Man, that was awesome to watch.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's what you love about baseball postseason. And, I mean, I actually was upset with myself because during this whole time, our hockey is going on, so I walking in and out throughout pregame and the game, and you see a different moment with another home run or another double, and you're thinking, like, oh, my gosh, this is – but you see it all over social media. And what I loved about this one is that for the Yankees side, it was the Stars. It was the Stantons. It was the Judge. But you just mentioned it. It was Lane Thomas for the Cleveland Guardians. It was David Fry for the Cleveland Guardians. These are guys that had their moment on the big stage. And that breathes life into a series because the Yankees win that one. If they just close it down in the ninth inning and it's over, nobody really cares about this anymore. And we're still talking about how easy of a path it was. We might still be at the end of the series if the Yankees win, but they go up 3-0, this series done. Nobody cares about it. Now, people look at this and say, did Cleveland just breathe some life back into their game? Do they make this a series now? And that's what you love about these baseball series. I actually love the format that they set it up where it goes 3-5-7-7 because it just builds up that anticipation for a different outcome of postseason baseball. So it was fun.
This also resembles more what you see during the regular season. Now, you can't do like a 7-game series is where you really have to see, okay, do we have the starting pitching that is necessary to get through this? Because if you get deep into an LCS and then deep into the World Series and you've consistently thrown bullpen games, dude, those guys are going to be shot. The other thing, there's some data on this, and I find it to be really interesting, and I'm curious to see how this kind of works around 5, 10 years down the road. There's been some data that now shows when teams like the Yankees, for example, see a reliever multiple times in that series, it does the same effect of when you see a starting pitcher the third time through the order. The first time that you see a reliever in a series, OPS incredibly low, regardless of who they are. Second time, it bumps up a little bit. Third time, now it's like, oh boy, be careful. You bring a guy into a series 3 times, things start to get a little dicey. Well, when you're doing this every single game, not just for your back 3 relievers, right, your high leverage guys, but you're bringing middle relievers in the 4th, 5th, 6th inning, now you've got to be super careful, and that increases some of the odds of keeping the starting pitcher in a little bit deeper because you get deeper into the series. So I'll be curious to see how that affects some of the movement, especially from the Guardians, who don't have a great starting rotation now as we get deeper into the ALCS.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the 7-game series is you have to have depth in your rotation. Now, doesn't necessarily have to be great. Apparently not. I mean, I'm looking at this postseason. I don't think there's a great rotation left standing.
I don't think there's a great team.
I agree with. I would agree with that. But you know, I mean, those numbers make sense from a reliever standpoint because you think of a starting pitcher. Starting pitcher's got what 4, 5 pitches he can turn to. Where relievers typically have what 2, maybe 3 if you've got a really good one. And talking about that game last night, like Emmanuel Clase, one of the best relievers in all baseball, an ERA below 1 this season. Below 1 at .61 was his ERA. And Aaron Judge has his moment, and not only has a moment, it hits an absolute shot the other way, in which in Cleveland that wall, by the way, is 9 feet high, so it takes a man to hit that ball out the other way.
If there's one thing I know about Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, they're men.
And the funny thing is, you know what's great, and it's why I think I love the unpredictability of the postseason at times, even though I do think sometimes the 6th seed going on a little too far. Aaron Judge doesn't have a playoff moment now. That's forgotten. Because the Yankees did not win that game, and they can still lose this series.
That's wild.
It's the Julio Jones catch in the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Nobody remembers it now because the Patriots came back.
Didn't even remember that catch until you just said that. So the funny thing is Aaron Judge is still searching for his postseason moment. You know, people, if the Yankees end up, let's just say they win this series, lose in the World Series. Next October, if Judge goes through a cold stretch, people aren't going to go, oh, he'll figure it out. Did you see what he did in that Cleveland series in the ALCS? They're going to go, man, Aaron Judge, choker in the playoffs. He still needs to have a big moment. And that was a crushing blow for Aaron Judge.
And Clase on the other side of things is now going to be a pitcher that Cleveland Guardians fans, despite all of his success that he's had, one of the best relievers in Major League Baseball over the last few years, he has now allowed more earned runs in this postseason than he allowed the entirety of the 2024 season. He appeared in 74 games during the regular season and allowed 5 earned runs. 5.
I'll just say this is why you got to trade Ryan Helsley.
And yes, in the postseason, he has appeared in 6 games and has allowed 6 earned runs.
Did you see what he did last night after the game?
Did he punch a wall?
No. No, well, that would have been stupid. But this was pretty stupid, too. Manuel Clase, after the game, went on Instagram, and he was flexing all the awards that he's won after his tough outing, showing off a couple of rings that he's won.
Okay,
some
so
awards.
this is over.
Yeah,
this is over.
So he was already going to be hated because of his struggles in October. That's going to add to the cherry on top.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll get to Ask Us Anything here in just a couple of minutes. If you guys want to get your questions in, sports or otherwise, the text line is the place to do so. Or YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. That's where the graveyard chat is off and running. You can go ahead and get your questions in over there. From the 314, love you guys, love the show, but if there isn't a good team left, then what is a good baseball team? I'm not saying there isn't a good team. I think there are 4 good teams that remained this year in the postseason. I do not think there is a great team. I don't think any of these teams, we will look back on them and say they were a complete team or they were a truly great team. Not every year does a truly great team win the World Series. I'm not sure that the 2014 Giants, for example, were a great team. They were a good one, and they got hot at the right time, and Madison Bumgarner went on an all-time great run. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you have a team that's just really good and gets, like last year, the Diamondbacks. I don't think the Diamondbacks were a great team. I think they were a really good one. They knew exactly who they were as a team, and they got hot at the right time. And that's enough. You don't have to apologize for it. If your team is that team that goes on to win the World Series, dude, you should celebrate them like crazy. But sometimes it's just a good team that goes on to win it. The Dodgers don't have a rotation. I don't think the Mets are a great team. I think they have got hot at the right time, and that might be enough. I think they're probably going to end up not being in the postseason much longer. The Yankees have a lack of starting pitching. I'm not sure their lineup is as deep as we want to believe. They've got some good hitters in it, but they've got some obviously deficiencies on the defensive side of things, as we saw last night, especially at first base. Yeah, there's some good teams remaining, but I don't think any of these are truly great.
You don't have memorable teams. You don't have a team that you're going to look back and be like, holy bleep, remember this? Like, I think the Dodgers, depending on what Mookie Betts does the rest of the way, because now he's gone into God mode. But prior to Mookie Betts, the biggest storyline with the Dodgers was Kike Hernandez's breakout season. And I don't know how much that's memorable from previous World Series where, like you mentioned, like, yes, the Giants may not have been great in 2014, but you know I'm always going to remember? Madison Bumgarner dominating that stretch.
Somebody said Dodgers don't have a rotation? Correct.
Yeah, they got Flaherty, Yamamoto's kind of an opener.
Serving as an opener
He gets 4 innings, and then he's done.
Yeah, he's kind of the classic 5 and dive, depending on where he's at with his pitch.
Walker Buehler just had an amazing start, but he's been bad for most of this season. Yeah, they lack a legitimate rotation. Compare this rotation to what you saw from the Texas Rangers, for example, last year.
It doesn't compare. Diamondbacks last year.
Yeah, it doesn't compare. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not trying to discount what the team that wins the World Series will accomplish. They should be celebrated. But, yeah, they're not a complete team. They have an unbelievable top of their lineup, and there is some lacking the rest of the way. Their bullpen has shown out really, really well in this postseason, and that's been a surprise considering it was a bit of a liability for them during the regular season. But their biggest issue is the rotation, and that's the case for most of the teams that are remaining in the postseason. Sorry, I didn't know that was a sore subject for people.
And their lineup is not extremely deep.
No.
It's like 1-2. Last night it was 1-2-3. But, I mean, Edman hit cleanup last night. Edman's a good player. But it's not like you think back to I don't remember what Astros team it was, where they had like Kyle Tucker hitting ninth, and you're like, oh, yeah, now that's a lineup right there.
That's Tanner Hendrickson. He's Alex Ferrario, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Ask us anything. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. That's next here on 101 ESPN.
St. Louis Blues hockey can be heard exclusively on 101 ESPN. Get the info you need before and after every Blues game with a First Community pre- and post-game show.
First Community Credit Union, calling St. Louis home for 90 years and powered by Scott Lee Heating Company.
Hey, it's BK with Alex Ferrario for our friends at Circus Sports in Illinois. Alex, when I bet, I want to win the most money possible. Winning in sports betting is really hard. And so when you win, you want to win the most money that you possibly can. And that's what I want when I'm betting on college football, as I'm going to be doing tomorrow. I like Texas. I like Kentucky. I like Alabama. A 3-game parlay on the college football side of things, all in the SEC. I'm going to bet, let's say $10 on that game. $55 return over there on the Circus Sports app in the state of Illinois, but I'm getting better odds over there. I've got Alabama -3 instead of -3.5, the hook that exists over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm getting better lines. I'm getting more money. That's why we bet with Circa.
Yeah, I did it last night. I had better odds on a Blues money line win with the under. They were significantly better than the 2 other sports books, so I brought in $55. Thanks for putting $5 down on that parlay. So whatever your bets may be on Circa Sports, they're the app you need to use. They're totally honest about it too. They tell you to go check out other sports booking apps because they know you'll be back because of those tight money line splits, because of their transparency, and they're not keeping money off of those winnings. You're making sure you're bringing in the most money possible. So download it today, whether you got it for college football, NFL this weekend, or maybe it's just those tight money line splits on some hockey games. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Time for Jamie's jersey giveaway, and this one is legit. Big old Colt 55 Colton Parayko. You can get yourself a chance to win the number 55 signed Blues jersey. It's really easy to get entered. All you have to do is go to 101ESPN.com or visit the 101 ESPN mobile app, sign up, register, and you will have a chance to win the Colton Parayko autographed jersey. All of that, of course, brought to you by Bud Light. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers.
Presented by Window World, stlouis.com. Simply the best for less.
314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, we'll get to them right now here on BK and Ferrario. From the 314, guys, when is the right time for that first batch of chili in the fall?
Oh.
We did ours last week.
That's smart. I think we're there.
I did mine about a month ago.
Month ago?
Yeah.
Wasn't it hot a month ago?
No, it was like that
Cool
55 degrees in the evening. It was like perfect outside. Now I had the stomach bug at the time, so it kind of ruined chili for me for about a month. But yeah, BK's right. Now, no, I mean when it gets below 50 degrees in the evening, oh yeah, that's when you know it.
I think that's the key. It's what is the temperature, not during the day, but when you get home in the evening and when you're getting ready to sit down for dinner. For us, we eat dinner a little later than a lot because I eat lunch really late because of our show. So yeah, I think that is how I judge it personally. If it's like 55-ish degrees or below when you're eating,
it's fun too because Katie's got like pumpkin candles going throughout the house in the daytime, but then when you walk home and that chili's been in the crock pot for like 6 hours.
What do you guys put in your chili?
I do beer in my chili.
What?
Yeah, I do beer. I do like tomato. You do all the normal stuff. Like you go beans, you go hamburger meat. We do a little Italian sausage in there.
What would you call it? Almost like the topping when it's done. Like I like little crackers in mine. I know some people put cheese.
Oh yeah, I do
chili.
like sharp cheddar cheese on it.
You guys do sour cream? I know that. I know you don't like the white gelatinous.
Of course you do Greek yogurt.
I don't like sour cream.
You don't like white gelatinous substance. You're putting Greek yogurt in your chili?
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
It's the same thing. I mean, it's all just some kind of a dairy.
I think people that put sour cream in their
Here's the
chili
key,
are
though.
Psychopaths.
Really?
Yeah.
People put the oyster crackers in there.
Oh, that.
No, man. I get the saltines, and I crumble them up, and you put them in. A little dusting.
Little Ritz crackers in there.
Some toast on the side.
Yeah, get some sharp cheddar, though.
I like a good grilled cheese on the side.
We have a place that makes sourdough bread down the street from us. We go there, grab some sourdough, have that as a side.
I do, too. I just got to keep asking Joey to make me some every once in a while.
All right, from the 314. Guys, if or when Ryan Helsley ends up getting traded, who closes for the St. Louis Cardinals next year?
Fernandez.
Yeah. I agree. It's Fernandez unless they bring in somebody like if they bring back a Keenan Middleton, he's healthy. He could be a guy that's in that role. I just honestly don't really care who closes. Yeah. I think it is going to be Ryan Fernandez.
You could go close by committee for all I care, but I would give it to Ryan Fernandez, who at least got those opportunities last year.
Luke Weaver can do it. Anyone can do it.
From the 314, guys listening to
time.
Smallman this morning, is $50 too much to pay for a concert T-shirt? For me, I'm not paying that much.
I have never bought a concert T-shirt because of that, because of how much they charge.
My wife is a big concert T-shirt gal. She $35 typically. Yep. I think in line with what you expect.
When Katie and I went and saw
50 is a lot.
We saw Dan and Shay in Columbus. We drove there. I think it was like 6 months ago, and they had a really nice sweater that I wanted to get for Katie. It's $85. I'm like, no.
I'll do it
Ridiculous.
if I really enjoyed the show. Like I saw AJR when they were last in town at Enterprise Center. Really enjoyed the show, so I ended up getting a shirt. But it's not every concert I go to.
I'd
pay $50 for one.
I've never bought one.
Really?
I don't think I've ever bought anything from a concert.
It's funny because my dad and I will go to a bunch of concerts together, and he'll get like a shirt basically at almost every one of them. Like he has a ton of concert shirts. It's his thing. He loves them.
Yeah, I get it. For some people, they like collect them.
Yeah.
Which not for me. From the 314, at 25 years old, do you guys think that Justin Fields has done well enough to warrant another legitimate chance as a starting quarterback? I do. I hope he ends up having an opportunity similar to what Baker Mayfield had with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know where that comes. I don't know what the perfect spot is for him, but that is the kind of thing that I would like to see for him. I thought he was fine this year. He is not a great thrower of the football. We all knew this. He can push the ball down the field. They haven't done a ton of that this year, and I think some of that is schematically the limitations with what you have with Arthur Smith. He's not going to throw the ball to the middle of the field very often, but his legs are a weapon that haven't been utilized enough this year. I think he can be like the 20th best starting quarterback in the NFL. Teams need that. So, yeah, I think he's deserving of another chance.
He should be getting the chance with Pittsburgh right now. I think Pittsburgh was the perfect spot for him with Mike Tomlin. That team doesn't really have any offensive weapons, and he's still finding ways to win football games. So I would have liked to see him get the Baker Mayfield treatment with Pittsburgh and kind of grow with him over these next couple of years. It's why this Russell Wilson thing pisses me off so much. Like, why are we going to a guy who's washed up and done over a kid who just put you in a winning window in the early portion of a season?
Yeah, I think he deserves another shot, and I agree. I don't think they should have benched him in Pittsburgh. Was he playing great football? No, by no means was he playing great football, but he was doing his job. You know, he was doing his job being a game manager, moving the ball sometimes, not a lot, but sometimes down the field. He was just doing enough to help you win, and I don't know if Russ can do that at this point in his career.
Last thing here, what's the furthest you're willing to drive before deciding to take a flight? This depends. This question
if I could
is
fly home, I would.
This question is very specific for me. Do we have the kids with us or not? Because if you've got a kid with you, that answer is a very short drive. It's like 4 hours. Anything more than 4 hours, I'm not driving.
I prefer to drive over flying no matter what. I've tried to convince Katie that our next trip to Disney World to drive.
Oh, dude, no.
Yeah, I've tried to convince her. I do not like flying.
That's an 18-hour drive.
I know. We've said, like, let's make it like a thing to where we travel a couple of days because I love Savannah, Georgia. And so, like, let's stop at Savannah, Georgia before we go to Disney World and things like that. I despise flying. And it's not the fear factor, although that's always there for me, but the whole process of going through security, getting there, waiting, having the anxiety of getting on the flight and getting your seat, and then having to wait when you get out of the flight, I just don't like it. I like controlling my own travel. And, I mean, we've driven to Savannah, Florida, or Savannah, Georgia, and that's like, I think, like an 8 or 9 hour drive. I'm fine with it. It's just, it takes me a little bit of time. You know, you stop every once in a while.
Somebody on the text line said flying with children is a nightmare as well. Sure, but it's short.
Yeah.
At least it's a contained amount of time that you have to do it for. When you're in that car and you've got a screaming baby, Alex, I'm sure you've experienced this before, doing that for 12 hours... Nah, man. I'll take the 2 hours of being in the flight over the 12 hours of being in that car.
I guess I should say, too, what I like about driving over flying is I'm the pilot, so I'm driving my car, so Katie's the one that has to climb back and forth for the kids the whole time.
I've been there. That's terrifying.
Yeah, 4 hours is my max if I'm driving with kids. If it's just me and Kara going, we've done the drive to Disney World, and I
love road trips.
It's not great, but you can make it
I just
work.
don't like the tight spaces, so I would rather fly. I think like 5 hours is probably the max for me that I want to do.
Now that we got this van, too, that's why I'm more inclined to go on road trips, because you've got more space now. You can spread out a little bit more, like our girls aren't crammed together. So it's like, I love that because I think it's a cool opportunity to sit and talk with people. You can't really do that on a flight because you're so
No, you
tight.
don't like doing that on a flight because you don't like talking to people that you don't know.
Yeah.
With Alex and T-Bone on VK, coming up next, credit where it's due. Drew Bannister's moves worked last night. We'll explain it next year on 101 ESPN.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return.
Great news at Auto Centers Nissan Herculaneum. Their fall into savings event, well, that has been extended through the month of October.
Two 314-887-4442. To regain your sex life in just one visit, call now. 314-887-4442.
More Blues talk, more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Critical, we're going to admit when we're wrong. That's the way I like to operate, Alex. If I say something to my wife that ends up being proven incorrect, I say, I'm sorry, I was wrong.
So did you apologize yet for the Royals?
So what happened by the time you were watching your phone the whole time?
I was not incorrect on that. So I apologize. But when I'm wrong, I admit as much. That's the way that I like to do things on our show. And yesterday, we were highly critical of the decisions that Drew Bannister decided to make with his lineup. And so when that works, we've got to be open, honest, and inform the public we were wrong. And Drew Bannister was right, and that is why he's in the position that he is, and we are over here doing what we do on the radio. Kasperi Kapanen was great last night.
I thought he was going to score in the second period.
He was great.
And I'm like, oh, this is going to bite me, isn't it?
I don't know how else to put it. He looked fantastic. He was skating like crazy. He was involved in the offense. He was noticeable, which is not something that I always say about him unless it's noticeable in the wrong direction. Kasperi Kapanen played one hell of a hockey game last night. And no, they didn't score until overtime. And so that is something that you also have to acknowledge. They didn't score, which is the goal when you're out there as a forward. But I thought Drew Bannister shaking up the lineup ended up working out as well as could have been expected, especially the Kapanen move. And beyond that, when they got into the game, something that we asked for yesterday was, please just allow this to breathe a little bit. If they don't score in the first period, don't shake it up going into the second. Just let them go back out there, especially if they're playing well but not getting the results. And for the entire game, they scored 0 goals in regulation, and they did not switch up the lines. They didn't switch them up a single time. There was one time where they ended up putting out the typical Thomas, Booch, and Kyrou
That was
line.
at the end of the second period to where they were trying to get a goal while the other team was gassed.
But overall, the top line was together for 15 minutes at 5-on-5. Shin line played on the ice together at 5-on-5 for 10 minutes. The Booch line for 9, Foxa line for 7. No other line combination played for more than a minute 20 together, and that was that Booch, Thomas, Kyrou line. Alex, credit where it's due. Drew Bannister coached a good game last night.
Yeah, I want to start with Kapanen because that's the one that I think we were most critical of because of the Nathan Walker. And it seemed why I noticed Kapanen so much was because those two guys that forecheck heavy, Kapanen was their offensive threat. And Kapanen did that. I mean, I think he finished with 3 shots on goal or 3 shot attempts. He was able to utilize his speed, get into the offensive zone. Foxa and Toropchenko did the heavy lifting, and Kapanen was the one that tried to create some offense. They were very noticeable, and they, I think, for the first 2 periods were their best line in terms of Corsi rating. So props to them for seeing that, and props to Kapanen for taking advantage of it, because you were sat because you weren't noticeable. And then you get back in that first game back, you pounced on that opportunity, and it's the reason why you try and keep that competition going. But, man, Drew Bannister had every reason to change the lines because he's done it in the first 4 games. That was the 9th time after the first period, 9 out of the 13 periods after the first, the Blues had ended with 10 or fewer shots on goal. And in the previous games, those line combinations were juggled up after the first period. And he did not touch those lines in the open of the second period. He went right back out there with them, and they got 14 shots on goal the next period. So, yes, we were critical of Drew Bannister. But, man, that was a Drew Bannister. It felt like a change of heart moment because he had the same reasoning to change the lines up that he had against the Vegas Golden Knights, against the Minnesota Wild, because you weren't generating offensive chances. You weren't generating shots on goal. But he stuck with it, and he ran him right back out there, and they rewarded him by building on the chemistry that they had in the first period. They had a chance to be up 1-0 in that second. That goal that Sorokin robbed Jake Neighbors was on the goal line, and he pulled it back. You went up against an incredible goaltender on the other side last night. Offensively, if you're playing maybe another team, I wonder if you score a goal or 2, and you're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with it. But to build off of the first period the way that they did, to where they had more scoring chances, more high-danger scoring chances, same with the third period, that was something that I hope Bannister and company saw, and it's like, yeah, let's keep this thing rolling.
I still don't love the line combinations. I want to make that clear. I think that there is probably a better way to construct this top 6. And I would still like to see Shin as your second-line center. I would like to see them move Roddick Fox up to that third line, and hopefully when Sonny gets back, he becomes your fourth-line center. That's what I would prefer. But the biggest thing for me is just allow something to either fail or succeed.
Yeah.
Just give it time to breathe. And that's what he was willing to do last night, so credit to Drew Bannister for that. Would you guys put Kapanen back out there on the 4th line for this game tomorrow night against Carolina? Did he earn that opportunity with the way that he played yesterday?
Yeah, I would say so. And, I mean, Texier skated again today. It seems like he might be ready to go, but I don't – I liked 3 of the 4 line combinations last night. I still don't like that Robert Thomas one. I still think you're looking for somebody to play with Robert Thomas that can be a consistent offensive threat. But I thought Bolduc played well with Buchnevich and Jake Neighbors. I thought Shen, Joseph, and Holloway was one of your best lines from start to finish, and your 4th line worked. So, yeah, Kapanen would stay in for me, and then I would have to wait one more game for somebody to not perform well to get Texier in the lineup.
Yeah, I think Kapanen earned his opportunity, so I would have him in the lineup for that game against Carolina, and then go from there. You know, whoever doesn't play well, whether it be Texier's ready to go or maybe it is a 4th line. Maybe Kapanen doesn't play well against Carolina. Boom, I'll just insert Nathan Walker back into that spot. I'm okay with kind of bringing in 1 or 2 guys depending on how guys play, kind of keep that competition up a little bit to continue to say, okay, I've got someone ready to take my job. But I think he earned his opportunity last night. He was great on that 4th line, so I would play him again.
I would do it as well. I will be curious to see how Texier plays into all of this. If Texier is ready to go, is it Bolduc that comes out of the lineup for him and he goes back down to the AHL? Is that the move? Because they really liked what they saw from him in his first game. Obviously, incredibly limited sample size. But I thought Bolduc has done pretty well over the last couple of games. We'll get more into that coming up later on this hour. Maybe it's Kapanen that comes out of the lineup and you bump somebody down. Maybe Matthew Joseph becomes a 4th-line player for you. I like what I've seen from him, too.
I wouldn't touch the Shen line.
They've got difficult decisions coming up, regardless of who they decide to pull, who they decide to put in. Maybe Texier just becomes an inactive for a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe you slow play this, say, hey, he's not quite at 100%. We'll wait for this to make some decisions on the guys that we have right now. These are good problems to have. You're deeper, which promotes competition, which allows for difficult decisions instead of what it's been over the last couple of years, which is like, hey, do we have Can we find something that maybe works at the NHL level? Just keep throwing guys up here from the AHL, and let's see what sticks. They're in a better spot right now.
Here's why I wouldn't juggle anything up, because you've got two more opponents on this homestand that play eerily similar to the New York Islanders. And what I mean by that is Bannister said that you're going to have to be patient with this team. You have to wait for your chances for them to make a mistake. You don't get to play pond hockey against them like maybe the San Jose Sharks or the Seattle Kraken. Carolina is going to be a very stingy team. Same can be said about the Winnipeg Jets. So I would just keep this the way it is right now and preach to your squad, you got two more games where you're going to have to play patient. It might be boring for fans of watching another 0-0 game going into the third period, but you've got two teams that you can't make mistakes trying to get too aggressive. And if you change up the line combinations, you put Texier in, you take Bolduc out, you put Walker back in, Kapanen comes out, it sends a message to the team of it's like, hey, we need more offense. And right now, I mean, you should be proud of the way that you performed against the New York Islanders last night.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. We are broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center today. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll talk a little bit more about Zach Bolduc and whether or not he's worthy of keeping on the roster whenever Texier does return from the IR. But coming up next, it is officially time for our football pick'em. We do this each and every week here on the show. I am really trying to get back into this thing. Week 1 put me behind the 8 ball. Can I do it? I'll give you my picks. We'll do all of that coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
It's time for another moment in Blues history.
On this date in 1989, the Blues would hang 9 goals on the scoreboard in Pittsburgh. Blues would score the first 6 goals between the first and second period. Brett Hull, Rod Brindamore, Dave Lowry, and 2 goals by Sergio Momesso. Hull and Momesso would finish with 4 points, while Mario Lemieux would be held pointless and finish as a -4. Greg Millen would pick up the win, stopping 21 of 24 shots.
This date in Blues history was powered by Classic Air Care, making people comfortable since 1926. For all your HVAC needs, classicaircare.com. Make your picks for this week's Fastlane Pick'em Challenge at 101ESPN.com. Show off your football knowledge and see if you can top the Fastlane and the dudes from the Rizzuto Show on the point. For this week's top score, it's the Fastlane and the Riz Show throwing down all football season long in the Pick'em Challenge. Enter your picks for this week right now at 101ESPN.com.
Refreshed by Bud Light, official beer sponsor of the NFL. Easy to Sunday, easy to enjoy.
We're back to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
It's that time of the week. It is time for our football pick-up with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. Standings going into the week. Alex has 10 points. T-Bone has 7 points. I have 5 points. If you're new to this segment, every Friday going into the football weekend, we select 3 games that we're most confident in. The only real restrictions here, game has to be played before we get back on the air on Monday morning. Game has to be a point spread, right? We're not going over-unders here. We're not going any prop bets here. It's against the spread, college football, NFL, both in play. That's it. It's very simple. Alex is 4-2 so far this month. T-Bone is 3-3. I am 2-4. Trying to get back into this thing. It was a really rough first week.
I'm not going to lose again because I still have a rash from the duct tape all over my arm. Actually, if you look right here, some of the tape still does not come off. So no more losing for your boy.
We'll see. Alex, you are in the lead, so I will give you the opportunity to make the first selection this week. What is your 1-point play heading in?
All right, boys. Well, I'm headed to tomorrow afternoon for my 1-point play. Lindenwood University is in action.
There's no shot.
I just wanted to see if this guy over here who's picking all these random games is going to say something.
I don't have one of those this week.
No, I don't even know if there's an actual line on that game.
Lost both of them. There is, actually. It's +6 for Lindenwood, and I'd say they're in it. They're getting Gardner-Webb running Bulldogs. But anyway.
I thought about Army this week. Decided again.
I'm going to the NFL.
So did I.
Surprise, surprise. I'm going to be here for all 3 of my picks. My 1-point play. You said earlier that you wish you had the cojones to take the Green Bay Packers. I'm taking the Houston Texans. I like them as the underdogs in this one. +3. I think this offense now with Joe Mixon back, I understand they don't have Nico Collins. I think their offense is in a good spot. Green Bay's got a really good defense. I'm looking forward to this one, but I think Houston keeps this one close. I think it's a 1-point play either way, but I'm taking the Texans +3 as my 1-point play.
T-Bone?
Yeah, I definitely did not have the cojones to take that one. Now, granted, I am going to get a little risky with it here on my first pick because James Cook is back, but it's not going to scare me away. Guys, the Tennessee Titans have the best defense in the NFL so far this year. They have given up the fewest yards allowed per game by 25 yards so far in the NFL. Look, if this was a 3-point line, I wouldn't touch this. 9.5? Give me the Titans +9.5. They're going to go into Buffalo. They're going to keep it close. They're going to lose, but they're going to cover the spread.
Okay, he knows Amari Cooper was just traded there, right?
I don't know, man.
Doesn't matter, man.
Didn't you do another spread like this and it bit you last time?
I took a team that was favored by 6.5.
Oh, okay.
+9.5 is ridiculous.
They have been playing close games. Of their losses this year, only one has been by more than 7 points, and that came against Green Bay. I think this is a team that is pretty similar to Green Bay in terms of how they go about things. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to be able to hit on a couple of their deep shots against the Titans defense. Their defense has been good this year. It has not been great, in my opinion.
I just wouldn't bet on Will Levis.
9.5 points, though, is a ton of points. So I don't mind the play. I wouldn't have made it myself, but I don't mind the play. It's not a bad one. All right, for my 1-point play this week, I'm going to the college football slate. I'm guessing this may be a popular selection because Texas, despite playing their backup quarterback, the one that is worse than the other guy, Quinn Ewers, back out there once again this weekend against the Georgia Bulldogs.
God, I hope he burns you.
They are at home, and I think they will win this one. I think they will win it big. Texas is an explosive offense. We've seen this year Georgia is more than happy to give up explosive plays with their defense. I do not think this is the same kind of Georgia offense that we have seen in recent years either. I just think Texas is the best team in the country right now. I don't think they're as good as they were a year ago, but they are the best relative to what we have to offer in college football in 2024. Give me Texas. I've got them -4 against the Georgia Bulldogs.
Quinn Ewers struggling scared me away from that game. If he had not scuffled last week against Oklahoma, I probably would have done the same thing, but it scared me enough to stay away from that.
The thing is, I think that's happening for a lot of people, and I think that's why the line is where it is. I think this should be more of like a 6.5 or a 7-point spread. I think Texas is that much better than Georgia so far this year. So him struggling last week, I think, makes the line a little bit more palatable. Alex, what do you got for your 2-point play?
All right, boys, 2-point play. Sticking in the NFL, I'm taking on the Atlanta Falcons -3. I think the Atlanta Falcons have figured some things out. You're in the midst of a 3-game winning streak. You've beaten a couple of good opponents. I don't really trust Seattle anymore. I don't know if they have the quarterback that can make the big plays. I think Seattle's got a decent defense, but I think the offense is just significantly better with Atlanta. You're talking Bijan Robinson, who's just on a hot streak right now. I like this -3-point spread, especially because it's on home field for Atlanta. So I'm taking Falcons -3.
They are going to be, the Seahawks are, to their fourth offensive tackle, their fourth string right tackle this weekend. That's not a great place to be at. It does seem like they will get some of their injured defensive linemen back in this game. That is huge considering they're going up against one of the most difficult running games to match up against in the NFL. I still don't think they're going to be up for that task. I like that one. It's something I considered.
Guys, my 2-point play, I'm going to stick in the NFL as well. Guys, this team's lost their roar. The Lions, no Hutchinson. Their offense is going to get slowed down by the Minnesota Vikings this weekend, who have another great defense, one of the best in the NFL, and it's such a small spread. It's going to be a close game. I think there's a chance it ends up potentially becoming a shootout, but because Hutchinson is now lost for the season, I don't think that Lions defense is very good. Give me the Minnesota Vikings at home against the Lions, -1.5 points.
That was my other 1-point play, and I had the Lions +1.5. I thought because it was going to be a shootout, and I thought that the Lions would pounce on that.
I don't know what to do with that game. I don't have a firm take one way or the other. Either way, I could have understood the pick. The Lions, I think, are the better team in the game, but I don't love Jared Goff going up against that defense. Brian Flores is a nightmare matchup for a guy like Jared Goff, who gets a little... He speeds up under pressure, and Brian Flores is going to change the pre-snap versus post-snap picture against him. I don't know if the Vikings offense will be able to take advantage of the Lions defense. Last game, Sam Darnold looked more like Sam Darnold of old, making some questionable decisions, so I didn't have the cojones to do it.
I'm really curious how Brian Flores prepares against a team that has two very different running backs that can be a game changer, because Montgomery is the big heavy one that will drive it right down your throat, but Gibbs is the playmaker.
I think the Lions are frauds, if I'm being honest. Now Hutchinson being out, that defense has not shown a lot of... The only thing that made the defense look good was Hutchinson. To me, they're not a Lion. They're more like the Lion from Wizards, or not Wizards, Waverly Place, of the Wizard of Oz.
Just referenced Wizards of Waverly Place.
All right.
I thought for you, Wizard of Oz would have just been in the back pocket ready to go.
I got there.
It's like a 50s movie, man.
I happened to just be talking about that show just a couple days ago.
Sure. I hate myself for what I'm about to do.
Well, this might put some eggs in your face.
Auburn plus the points.
Sunday Night Football.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh, no.
The New York Jets
are
traveling to Pittsburgh. And the New York Jets are only a 1.5-point favorite. Russell Wilson is going to be the starting quarterback for the Steelers. I don't think Russell Wilson is very good. The Jets just made the big move to get Devontae Adams on their side. I think they're immediately going to show some of that chemistry. I think early on, you'll see that pay dividends. I don't think the Steelers are a very good football team. They've got a great defense, but this is the week where they got Devontae Adams. I don't like myself for doing this. I do not like Aaron Rodgers. But I'm going to back him this weekend in this specific game against the Steelers. Give me the Jets in a pick that is sure to backfire against me. -1.5 points on the road at Pittsburgh.
That's my 3-point play.
Oh, I know you're both going to lose this one.
That's my 3-point play. The Pittsburgh Steelers are losing this game solely because they're putting Russell Wilson as the quarterback. And you can't go back from that in the middle of the game. They're going to stick with Russell Wilson this entire game. I don't like the Jets. I think they're frauds. I don't think they're very good. But I also think Pittsburgh is going to just completely ruin whatever they built up with Russell Wilson as the quarterback. So that's my 3-point play, -1.5.
I really don't like that pick for the two of you, but 3-point play, guys, I'm going to be feeling the pressure on Saturday. I really am. It's going to be a tense afternoon. I'm going to add to it. I'm going to back the boys while I'm going to the Fighting Illini. I will be in Champaign on Saturday. The Illini are going to take down this crappy Michigan Wolverine squad. Give me the Fighting Illini +3.5 as my 3-point play for this weekend.
I can't believe you're doing it.
I'm doing it. I'm going to back the boys.
Do you feel good about it?
No, but I'm going to do it anyways. Adds for the content, adds to my stress level on Saturday afternoon.
Hey, man, good for you. I've done this with my Missouri Tigers. I don't have the gumption to do it this weekend. I don't think I would touch that line with a 10-foot pole. I had no chance would I take Missouri -4 against Auburn. If I was going to take one side, it would be Auburn plus the 4 points in that game, honestly. I think it's going to be really close, but good for you. Good for you.
They're going to beat Michigan for the first time since 2009.
Damn, 15 years? It's been a minute.
Do factors on my side?
I think Illinois might be the better team. Like, just straight up, if you told me which of these two teams is better, I think you have the better quarterback. I think you might have the better coach, honestly, in this game. Defense is comparable, at least. I like the pick. All right. For my 3-point play, my last pick this week, the final pick for our Pick'em Challenge this week. Another one that I hate. I didn't like any of these spreads, boys. I did not feel good about anything going into this weekend.
I felt good of 2 of my 3.
I don't like what we've seen from the Philadelphia Eagles. I didn't like the hairstyle choice that we got this past weekend from Nick Sirianni. I didn't like him talking trash to his own fans. I didn't like the way that Jalen Hurts looked in that one. Yes, A.J. Brown bailed him out a couple of times, but they didn't look right. Something just still feels off.
Are you really picking the
Their defense is not very good either.
Don't do it, dude. This is your 3-point play. This is like do or die.
It's a 3-point spread. Give me...
No.
The G-Man!
Oh, boy, this is him trying to... He liked what he saw last week when they almost made him pay.
He's jumping on the team that almost made him lose last week to lose the 3-point play this week.
Yeah, I've got the Giants
I'm
plus
not worried
3.
about Illinois plus 3.5 anymore.
They're at home. Giants have to travel. Give me the Giants plus 3 at home against the Eagles.
That was such a bad pick.
Boy, you might be 0-3 this week. What was your 1-point play again?
Texas.
And I like
you
that
like
one.
that one. Get out of here. I thought you would pick Texas, honestly.
I was too scared. I think you go 1-2 this week. You get your 1-point play.
You sure you don't want to flip your 3 in your 1-point play?
Yeah. That's what I got.
No give-backs.
No, took your finger off the chessboard. Yep. Yeah, I don't feel good about you, man. As a friend, I don't feel good for you right now.
I do have a little... You guys know my tummy rumbles occasionally. I get food poisoning more often than anybody in America.
Yeah.
It's true.
This is where I'm at. Man. I've got the Texas Longhorns, who I don't like. I don't like their starting quarterback. I've got the Jets. I don't like their starting quarterback. I've got the Giants. Don't like their starting quarterback. What could go wrong?
What
could possibly backfire?
I just want you to understand something. That the moment you ripped that tape off of my arm, I'm going to make sure that I shove some of those eggshells into your skull. I just want you to understand that.
I'm sure everything will go swimmingly this weekend. So T-Bone's picks this week. He's got the Titans plus 9.5 against the Bills. He's got the Vikings minus 1.5 against the Lions, and he's got the Illini. What's the line in that one again?
Plus 3.5.
Plus 3.5 against the Michigan Wolverines. For Alex this weekend, if you want to follow, you want to fade these, whatever. Texans plus 3 against the Packers. Falcons minus 3 against the Seahawks, and he's got the Jets as well against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I think it's going to be an excellent weekend.
And coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to dive into the junk drawer. But next, Zach Bolduc, is he worthy of keeping on this roster as you get Texier back into the lineup? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN.
Coverage of 101 ESPN is presented by Onder Law Injury Lawyers. GetJim.com.
Seal off drafts, dust, and moisture with MD Weather Stripping from Menards. A well-sealed home is more comfortable and energy efficient. We have the largest selection of in-stock weather stripping with over 130 products available to take home and start lowering your energy bills today. Save big money on weather stripping right now at Menards. And check out our weekly flyer on Menards.com for more great deals.
Save big money at Menards.
Right now, 38 states allow for sports betting, including 7 of Missouri's neighboring states. Amendment 2 gives Missouri sports fans the freedom to bet on games too, and that will generate over $100 million for our schools without raising property taxes. Amendment 2 is endorsed by the Chiefs, Cardinals, Royals, Blues, and Missouri's 2 professional soccer teams, the KC Current and St. Louis City. These days,
Grimsley, Dan McLaughlin, and Randy Carricker. The Opening Drive, weekday mornings from 7 to 10 on 101 ESPN.
The Opening Drive is presented by Sumner One.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
First out for St. Louis. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Bruns with your Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night at Enterprise Center, Blues netminder Joel Hofer earned his second career shutout. STL blanks those visiting Islanders 1-0 as Jake Neighbors pots the game's lone goal 2+ minutes into OT. Hofer recorded 34 saves after turning back San Jose 1 week ago. Tomorrow, Metropolitan worst Carolina arrives downtown. Saturday, Pigskin, meanwhile, will position 19th ranked Mizzou against Auburn. Luther Burden III and Tristan Newson both expected to play. Illinois draws number 24, Michigan. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alex, sometimes I get criticized for overly relying on numbers. It's a fair critique. It happens sometimes. I'm not going to lie. When I look at Zach Bolduc's numbers, he has 1 assist, 1 point. That's it. 1 point so far on the season. He's playing an average of about 12.5 minutes per night. Nothing about that stands out on the stat sheet. And I think he needs to stay in the lineup. I've been really impressed by what we've seen so far this year from Zach Bolduc. I think it was a little bit of a slow start for him, but since missing that first game for God only knows what reason, when Kapanen had to take his spot in the lineup, he was just better. Just flat out better for 2 preseason games. And how could you possibly set that? Okay, I'll set that aside for a second.
He just played well again, man.
I like what we've seen from Zach Bolduc because he plays the style of game that I think the Blues are leaning more into. We've made the comparison a million different times, and it's not just because they're both French-Canadian. He plays a style that reminds me of later career later career David Perron.
Zach Bolduc plays like later career Zach Bolduc. Can you see into the future?
It eerily resembles the game from David Perron.
Yeah.
He's a pesk with the puck. He is a guy that is willing to go into the dirty areas. I would like to see him shoot even more than he has this year, but he's one of the very few guys on the team that I do feel like when he gets the opportunity, he's not passing up on that shot. I've liked Zach Bolduc's game, and because he is a player that you're planning to build around for the future, even if he's not the best player for right now, even if you believe Texier is the better player today, I would like to see Zach Bolduc get an extended run because he's very clearly not overmatched. He's not a guy that came up here and was like, oh, you can't keep him around. He's got to go back down to the AHL for some more seasoning. I'd keep him up here even after Texier is activated.
He's been a positive on the ice for every single game. I mean, except the Islanders one, but nobody scored until overtime, so you couldn't be a positive in that one. But he has not been a liability on the ice. You talked about the shots. I would like to see him shoot more. The first 2 games, he was letting it fly. The last 2 games, he hasn't even taken a shot. That's probably a little bit more of that delegating on the ice, trying to get the puck to a Buchnevich and the Neighbors to get more offense. Here's what I love about him. You mentioned the physicality. He's got 4 hits in his last 2 games. He blocks shots. He's only playing about 11 or 12 minutes. But in those 11 or 12 minutes, he's impacting the play on the ice. The Corsi rating, I believe, for that Buchnevich Neighbors Bolduc line was close to 50% last night, if I'm not mistaken, over 50%. Last night felt like the first time that you were generating something, building something with Bolduc. Because the first 3 games, he was fine, but he wasn't noticeable. And unless you're noticeable, it's hard for me to sit here and say you need to stay at the NHL roster. Because I'd rather you go be the best player on the ice in the AHL than just be somebody who's floating around in the NHL. So it made sense. But the last game against the Islanders, and even a little against the Minnesota Wild with that pass that he had on the 1 goal that was scored, felt like they were building something. And right now, you're rolling in a positive direction. And I even think if Texier says he's ready to go for tomorrow night and you want to get him in, you can pull Kapanen out and just put Texier in on the 4th line because you're doing the same thing with him that you did with Kapanen. You want to add an offensive weapon to a 4th line that can create offensive zone time. Just go that route. And until Bolduc takes a step back Where I go back to the Bannister comment in preseason, where you didn't see him for a couple of games, and then he basically said, look, he's good. He's just got some things he's got to build being a younger player. Until you see that mistake take place in a game, I would keep throwing him out there, because if anything, you're building confidence for this kid rather than saying, nope, not a good game, come out of the lineup.
In that scenario, do you send Kapanen down? Do you send Walker down? Because you're going to have to make a move in
if it were me,
activating Texier,
I would
not just with the lineup, but also sending somebody out.
I would send Scott Perunovich down.
Well, that's the second move potential. You would send that down.
I would do that first, and then when Sundqvist comes back, then I make my decision between Bolduc, Walker, and Kapanen.
There you go.
P.O. Joseph looked good last night. Like, I know he wasn't the biggest storyline, but the guy had like 6 shot attempts last night. He's not afraid to shoot the puck. That's the one thing we've talked a lot about Scott Perunovich. He won't shoot the puck. So I got to be honest, if something were to happen, and I'm knocking on everything possible, if something were to happen to one of your left-handed defensemen, Joseph's the first guy I'm looking at.
He has been for them. They've already done that twice.
So am I taking a chance of losing him? Absolutely. But I'm not sending Walker down, because you will lose Nathan Walker. Somebody will pick that up for their roster. You could do it with Kapanen, but Kapanen's shown you twice that when you put him in, he at least can give you a spark. And Bolduc plays well. So, yeah, I would send Perunovich down, and I would have 2 forwards sitting up in the press box. And then when Sundqvist comes back, I make my decision.
I was going to go that direction. I thought it would be unpopular. I agree with you entirely. That's what I would be doing, because Perunovich very clearly just does not have a spot on this roster.
He hasn't played yet.
He's not a part of the present, and I don't think he's going to be a part of the future. And when you have a player like that is on the roster, he's the most expendable player on the team.
Think about
it's unfortunate, but it's just true.
Think about what Bannister said about getting Kapanen back in. I want to get these guys' feet wet. I wanted to get them reps early on in the season. Guys, we're 5 games in, and you've had 2 opportunities to get Perunovich some reps, and you haven't seen him.
He's the only player on the roster that has not played in a game.
Yeah, I would say the writing's on the wall in that sense. He doesn't really have a role on this team. P.O. Joseph, Wally pipped him for that role. Can't really Wally pip because Perunovich wasn't injured, but P.O. Joseph has taken over that spot. There is much more use for a guy like Kapanen and Walker on the forward side sitting up in the press box than there is a Scott Perunovich.
I agree with that. I think he's a guy, and honestly, I wonder if the Blues are potentially exploring maybe a trade with somebody.
Could be.
Somebody would probably take him on. And if you're the Blues, you would at least want to try and get a asset back. Look, it's not going to be anything great. It's probably a 5th, 6th round pick. I think that's what they got for Bortuzzo, if I remember correctly.
You know what? You get an AHL player.
Yeah,
you get
sure.
an AHL player
Why
and
not?
say, put him in the minors.
Because, like, if you try and send Scott Perunovich down, I wouldn't doubt that maybe one of the worst teams in the NHL, like the Sharks, somebody like that would say, why not? We can bring him in. We're in asset accumulation mode. Let's just claim him and we get him for free for nothing and just take on a salary. I wonder if the Blues are trying to explore some moves, because he's a guy that I would send down, but if I'm the Blues, I would try and get an asset in return for him rather than just lose him through waivers.
I would try. I'm not sure that anybody's actually going to trade for him.
Totally.
Just being totally candid, I don't know that he has value on the trade market anymore. For a lot of teams, I think they'll say, we'll play the waiver game.
Yeah.
If you want to place him through waivers, feel free. We're not going to trade for him. And I think that's where he's at this point in his career. He's fallen behind P.O. Joseph for the Blues. P.O. Joseph was a guy that any team in the NHL could have had this offseason, and he came to the Blues on what is essentially a minimum level contract. When that is where you're at in your career right now, Perunovich had some prospect status, sure, but he's no longer super young. He's almost 26 years. He's 26 years old now. He's had plenty of opportunities. He's just too much of a liability defensively. I think he's going to be somebody that has to make it through waivers, and I wouldn't be shocked if he made it through waivers at this point.
It's very possible. I would, and I'm sure that's probably what's taking place. You're exploring to see maybe if somebody's got an AHL player that's not going to get to the NHL, and you say, hey, we'll take him off your hands and we'll put him in our AHL. But, yeah, you might be able to sneak him through, because it is still early on in the season, and teams still have full rosters that if they want to put somebody there, they might have to send a guy down that they don't want to, or they send a guy through waivers that they don't want to potentially lose also. So it makes more sense if you're – Joey made this reference multiple times last night with me. The Blues are in between right now running a sprint and running a marathon. You're running a sprint because you want to pick up points in the early portion of the season. It's important. But you're also running a marathon because you know the long game is important for guys like Zach Bolduc and Philip Broberg, Dylan Holloway, things like that. Well, this is one of those things that you're doing both right now, because you could keep running the sprint. Bolduc's helping you pick up points. You've picked up points in 3 of the 4 games he's played in. But you also can keep doing the marathon with him and keep him developing in the lineup and have 2 guys that are fine with being the 13th and 14th forwards in the press box versus a defenseman who's probably never going to see the ice.
One last thing here, and this is a very premature conversation. We're 5 games into the season. We've got another few months before we get to the trade deadline. But watching this team right now, I think they're pretty decent. I don't know how great they are, but I think they're pretty decent. They're fun. They might be worthy of, instead of subtracting at the deadline, like many expected, including myself, they might be a team that's worthy of adding at the deadline. And you mentioned, the reason I bring this up is because you just talked about the sprint versus the marathon.
Yeah.
This could be the deadline where you have to make a decision on, are we more interested in the sprint for the rest of this year or the marathon where we get assets that can help us for the future? I will be fascinated to see if this team can put itself into a position where they convince Doug Armstrong with their play that they are worthy of adding for the sprint. And in my opinion, as I watch them right now, the place where I think that would make the most sense is that second line center position. So that to me is something that I will be watching for the next 40 games or so. What can they do to convince Doug Armstrong, hey, this is a good team with the potential to be a better than good team if we get the right guy in here, and that guy is very likely to be a second-line center.
Look, you got cap space because of the LTIR situation. I think the deadline cap space means you're going to have about $5.2 million.
Which means you could add somebody that for the season was supposed to make like $8 million. Yeah. You have more than enough money to be able to make a real significant move.
And it can be a pending free agent because then you figure it out in the offseason of what's going on with Torrey Krug and things like that. I actually think making a trade... First off, you can't get somebody that blocks a Dvorsky or a Snuggerud because they believe that those guys are going to impact this roster this season. And Doug said that in the offseason. Like, we don't want to go after somebody who's just going to block the
Hey, man, to be totally candid, this is, again, we're so far away from this, but I'm not worried about that right now. If Snuggerud is going to be here for like 10 games, he might not even be somebody that's really factoring into your plans. And for Dvorsky, they didn't think that he was ready for the NHL. So I'm not sure that he's going to be ready to be on a contending team's second line.
And that's why you go after potentially if there's something available that's just here for the remainder of the season. Because to capitalize on both the sprint and the marathon with this season, I do think it's impactful to get a player that makes a difference for your squad. Because we talked with who do we just speak with in the impact of getting into the postseason?
Bill Guerin.
Bill Guerin, thank you. We just spoke with him of the impact for your young players of getting into the postseason. And he said it's probably the most important thing to have so they know what playoff hockey is like as they continue to grow. If you're a fringe playoff team, yeah, you capitalize on that now because that benefits you in the long run. Even if that player's not here beyond this season, it pushes you into a playoff spot so they get a taste of the postseason. You've got 2 potential openings to try and capitalize on. One is the forward spot in the top 6, whether it's a centerman or a winger. And the other one is a top 4 left-handed defenseman if you don't feel like Leddy's that guy this season.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk about this with Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, when he joins us as he does each and every Friday on BK and Ferrario, coming up at 1:15. But next, it's time for the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
The MLB playoffs are on ESPN tonight. Yankees and Guardians. Pregame at 6:30. First pitch at 7:08. The MLB lives on 101 ESPN. Blues talk more often. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Brought to you by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trashed wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week.
Earlier today, somebody on the text line asked us during Ask Us Anything, what's your most unpopular sports opinion? And for me, that unpopular sports opinion is probably that I think that Derek Jeter is the most overrated baseball player in the history of the sport, one of the worst defenders at shortstop, numerically, not just based on opinion, that we've ever seen. And he gets overrated because he was on an all-time great team in an era where he was the face of the team. He's the captain, the Yankees, the girlfriends, all of that stuff, right?
The girlfriends, we're just going to throw that one in there.
I mean, are we acting like that's not a big part of the
gift
Derek
baskets
Jeter story?
After the night with Derek Jeter? Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, the gift basket where you put your phone in it beforehand. You go hang out with Derek Jeter.
In the day and age that we live, it's probably smart by Derek.
I'm not saying he wasn't brilliant. He was super smart, and he curated this image of himself that allowed for him to be who he is today. That being said, he's boring as hell on television, and he was not as good as people say that
we're going to go off of boring on television. You know who's also boring on television? Patrick Mahomes.
Agreed.
Okay.
And if Mahomes was I don't think I would say Mahomes isn't very good at this.
And I don't think he's very good at what he does.
Okay. Anyways, and then there's your unpopular opinion. Another maybe unpopular opinion that I have, I am so glad Tony Bennett is out of college basketball.
Whoa,
we have officially arrived I think Tony Bennett seems like an all-time great human being. Also, his basketball is the most infuriating thing in the world. I loved nothing more than seeing that team get bounced in the first round of the playoff by of the tournament by a 16 seed. It's one of my favorite things that's ever happened, and I was hopeful that would put an end to that style of basketball. Then they won a national championship the next year, but.
This isn't looking good for you right now.
That he is retiring from the sport. Tony Bennett, for those not familiar that aren't big college basketball fans, he has been the head coach at Virginia for the last 15 years. He plays a very grinding style of basketball where they get to like 50 points and that's enough for them to win. And if that's your style, God bless you. It ain't for me. Alex, I will say, though, in college sports right now, we are losing a lot of the all-time great coaches. Not via them passing away, but them choosing willfully before they get to the end of their careers that they are done with the direction that the sport is heading. And that is their prerogative. But we are now down to 6 active head coaches in basketball that have won a championship. Pitino, Izzo, Self, Calipari, who just left Kentucky, Scott Drew, and Hurley. In football, it's down to 3. We have 3 active head coaches that have won a title in FBS football, and one of them is likely retiring at the end of the year with Mac Brown. It's just Kirby and Dabo that are left that are, winning of college football championships. We are entering a new era of collegiate athletics, and it's going to leave a lot of the old school coaches behind. I'm glad Bennett's gone, but it is kind of sad that a lot of the dudes that you just have developed almost this like weird, strange relationship with over the last 20 years are no longer going to be a part of the sport.
And the real question is, are you going to see the longevity of those guys like you saw, like a player or a coach being with a team for as long as guys like Tony Bennett has, or the names that Tom Izzo has with the Michigan State? Because you're entering an era, we're already in an era where guys are only there for a few years, and when it doesn't look good, you cut the cord immediately and you go get somebody else. That's where that passion comes from for, I don't know if passion is the right word because you just completely obliterated his career on the air, which is fine. But that's where the connection comes from for a lot of people with those icons in sports, is them being there for the longest time.
I think what this comes down to is it is 5 times, maybe even more than that, harder to build a dynasty, if you want to call it that. I don't know if, Dabo kind of had that. Dynasty might be a bit of a strong word, but to have sustained championship caliber success, like, it's a lot harder to do that on the football side. For basketball, I'd say Sweet 16, Elite 8, somewhere in that range is probably where you're talking about, or Final Four are
Elite 8,
where people
the
talk about.
The final of your region.
It's a lot harder to get to that point now because of the wild, wild west state of the sport. I don't know if it's because there's we don't have any good coaches anymore. No, I think there's great head coaches still around in the game. I think it's just gotten a lot harder. The parity's gotten a lot better across all collegiate athletics to where it is way harder. I mean, look at Georgia. I thought Georgia was going to be the team. I thought Kirby Smart was going to be that guy that was, hey, he's evolved into this modern era. He's doing it with Georgia. Look at that. He's going to have this great program for the next 10 years. He may not make the playoff this year. So I think that's the reason we're seeing this kind of loss of all these great coaches. Like, you think Coach K, of course you're going to go to Duke. You know, there was no, like, NIL opportunity at Wisconsin, for example. You wanted to go play for Coach K. Why? Because he was the best coach in college basketball, and it was a blue blood program. Well, under the table, sure. But now that
it's not under the table anymore.
Yeah, now that it's not under the table and it's legal, everybody's got kind of their own NIL power chest.
I think in football, the reason that we're seeing this where, like, the talent has been distributed more evenly, not evenly, but more evenly than it once was, is because places like Georgia that used to have backup quarterbacks and backup right tackles and third-string defensive ends that were better than, like, Missouri starters at all those respective positions, now those guys will transfer at the end of the year to get an NIL package somewhere else, because they get more opportunities to play at those other schools. So the depth is not what it once was. Go back and look at, like, the 2001 Miami Hurricanes depth chart and look at how deep you could go, like 4 deep at certain positions with NFL players at all 4 of those spots. Running back, they were just loaded. The same thing has been true in the past of Alabama and Georgia. Clemson at receiver, Ohio State at wide receiver has had some of this. Now some of those guys, instead of being able to just stockpile the talent, people are still committing to those schools. And then if they don't play in their freshman year, they're gone.
Yep.
And they'll go to another place where they're going to get an opportunity right away to start for them. And now they hit the ground running at that new school, and you lose that opportunity to stockpile that talent as they're like sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Now it's just you've got the star-studded lineup at the top, and there's a gap, and there's really young players a lot of the time that are lined up right behind them. It makes things much more difficult. And in the college basketball side of things, you have a new roster every year. I don't blame any of these coaches for getting out, because this is not what they signed up for. 5, 10, 15 years ago, the sport was so different than what it is today. I think if you're a new coach getting in and this is just what you know, it's not all that hard for you because you've grown up with this version of college basketball. But if you're somebody like Tony Bennett that's been at this school doing the same thing basically for 15 years, where your philosophy is we are going to get these guys out of high school recruitment and we will develop them over the course of 4 years, well, that model doesn't really exist anymore in college basketball. It's something that is of the past. It's becoming increasingly harder for guys like that to have success at this level. I don't blame Tony Bennett for getting out, but man, it's strange to see so many of these coaches that have so much history, especially in college basketball, where you get to know them every year more and more in March Madness, just be gone. Just walk away from the game while they're still in their prime. We saw it with Jay Wright. We've seen it now with Tony Bennett, and I think you'll continue to see it with others that could still do it for another 5, 10, maybe even 15 years, but it's just not worth it for them because of the amount of time, effort that has to go into it, and because it's not the game that they signed up for previously.
All right, we all know who the next college coach is that needs to retire, right? Kirk Ferentz. I can't watch Iowa football again. I can't. It's terrible.
I don't know who you're talking about.
I can't watch the punt fest anymore. It's time for him to go.
Hey, man, we love defense and tight football games.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. We're going to talk to Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, coming up in about 15 minutes. I'm fascinated to hear what he has to say about Joel Hofer and the step that he's made in his game, especially with his puck movement skills. We saw that on the final play. It helps the Blues win the game last night. I want to see what Mike McKenna has to say about breaking down that play when he joins us in about 15 minutes or so. But coming up next, I'm surprised we haven't had more texts about Tommy Edman so far today. We'll give you our thoughts on what he did last night next here on 101 ESPN.
You can now watch 101 ESPN live on our Air Alliance Team Studio Cams. Catch every show live on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN Studio Cams.
Presented by the Air Alliance Team Heating and Cooling. Getting the job done quickly, correctly, 100% of the time.
exclusive home of St. Louis Blues hockey. WXOS HD1 East St. Louis, 101 ESPN. We're back to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
One of my best friends is a Mets fan. And I'm going to read you the text, Alex, that I got last night from my friend as the LA Dodgers took it to the Mets last night. Good God, enough of bleeping Tommy Edman already. That's a totally reasonable response.
That's what every Cardinals fan was thinking watching him have more success.
Considering last night Tommy Edman went 2 for 6 with 3 RBIs and a run of his own. Tommy Edman's been really good so far in this postseason. He's batting .325 overall. In this series against the Mets, I believe he's batting almost .500 so far. He is infuriating as a player that you're going up against because he just always makes contact. He has become a huge piece of the Dodgers lineup, especially against left-handed pitching. Like you saw yesterday, he was their cleanup hitter going up against Jose Quintana. Well, let me say that again. Tommy Edman, yes, the same Tommy Edman that played here, was the cleanup hitter for the LA Dodgers against Jose Quintana yesterday. Here's what MLB Network had to say about Edman's performance after that game.
Every year you watch somebody play in the postseason, you go, I didn't know he was this good a player.
Right.
And it's not just because the batting average is hot and he's swinging the bat, but he makes every play. And that's what shows up in the postseason. He makes all the plays. He's always in the middle of all the action. And it's phenomenal to watch this guy.
He's a switch hitter. And remember how we talked about Luis Arraez just doesn't want to strike out? He's not at the Luis Arraez level, but it's hard to strike him out.
That is the exact kind of player that I want to be on my team if I'm the Dodgers with Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani. And last night he didn't play, but Freddie Freeman. I need guys like Tommy Edman. I need guys that can come in and just make all of the plays. Be the perfect complementary piece, Alex. The Cardinals' problem is that they haven't had enough of those stars that perform at the high levels once you get to the postseason. Shohei and Mookie Betts have been great. The Cardinals guys have fallen short in that regard. But I think last night proved once again we undervalue here locally the kinds of players that the Cardinals have been producing. Tommy Edman, Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar. These guys are really important to contending clubs. You need players like that. The thing that the Dodgers have that you lack and have lacked for previous seasons is that star talent that shows up when the moments are the biggest. That's what they're missing. I think the Cardinals have the requisite amount of this connective tissue with guys like Tommy Edman that know their roles and perform it well.
Yeah, I watched Tommy Edman's success and think, like, if the Cardinals could get to the postseason, I think they'd have these guys that come out of nowhere and come up with a big hit, a big play. Guys like Brendan Donovan, Mason Wynn, Alec Burleson. You felt like those guys could have had a moment in a playoff series this year. I mean, heck, we saw... what's our boy that was traded away?
Lane Thomas?
No, not Lane Thomas. The guy that was with the Cardinals. He was like a first baseman DH. Why am I blanking on his name?
Juan Yepez?
Yes, Juan Yepez. We saw Juan Yepez step in and have a moment. You know those fringe Cardinals players like anybody, BK. But you saw Juan Yepez come up with a moment like that. That's never been the Cardinals' problem. The Cardinals' problem has been, cool, but who's their guy they're going to lean on and be their Aaron Judge or Mookie Betts that steps in and says, yeah, I'm going to end this game right now? Because it wasn't Goalie, wasn't Arenado. You haven't had that guy since Albert Pujols, Carlos Beltran, Matt Holliday, Yadier Molina. You got no issue with the supporting cast. I think the Cardinals identify those guys well. And that's coming from a guy who's negative about the Cardinals. What their problem is, you don't have that guy that's going to change the game that you can rely on.
And it's why they talked at their press conference, and the press conference after the press conference, and the one after that.
Yeah, the fourth one. I love the sequel.
They talked about, our minor league system is broken. No, you're doing the same thing you've been doing, which is developing those pieces that we're just talking about. And instead what they're saying is, well, we haven't developed a superstar. Look at the postseason rosters. The Dodgers' 3 guys came externally. Ohtani, Freeman, and Betts was not developed by the LA Dodgers. Pete Alonso of the Mets, he was developed by the New York Mets. You look at the Yankees,
Lindor wasn't, yeah.
Lindor was not. You look at the Yankees, Stanton, who's, I'd call him a star-esque, was not developed by them. Juan Soto was not developed by them. Judge was. Okay, so they got one. And then the Guardians have Jose Ramirez. But most of those guys that I just said were not developed internally. It is way harder to try and develop the superstar than it is to say what the Cardinals were doing, which is, hey, we're going to develop the supplementary pieces. We're going to find a way to get a superstar, whether that is a signing or we'll trade and get him, and then we'll try and sign him to a long-term extension. And they did it. They did the formula perfectly when they got Goalie Arenado. But you know what? It just didn't work. Those guys were not performers in October. But that doesn't mean you should just abandon the model completely. That's what's so frustrating with what they're doing, and that's why it is. Yeah, I think it was Harold Reynolds who said that in the MLB Network cut. He's spot on. You need somebody that you look out at a playoff roster and go, oh, I thought that guy was a good player. I didn't know he was that good of a player. And Tommy Edman is exactly that for the LA Dodgers.
And I think the Cardinals currently have a lot of those guys, or at least the potential to have a lot of them. I think a guy like Thomas DeJacy, I don't know when we get to this place in his career, but I think there's a time when that may be his role, where he's like a 7-hitter that's just an annoyance. He makes contacts with everything from the right side, and you could say the exact same thing about Alec Burleson from the left side of the plate, where they're just swinging at everything. It's like, God, this guy keeps finding ways to get hits. It's infuriating. Then you look at like Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar. The Dodgers, one of the biggest storylines from last night's game that's probably not getting the credit that it deserves. They just didn't swing at pitches from outside of the zone. They took their walks. They were super patient. And they have now, I think it's 31 walks in the first 4 games of this series, which is the most in any 4-game stretch in Major League Baseball postseason history. Burleson and Nootbaar are the exact kind of players that could do something like that. Nolan Gorman, if he gets things back on track, could be a Teoscar Hernandez type once you get into the postseason, where it's maybe not perfect, but he has the left-handed thump that plays in the playoffs. Michael Ciani, Victor Scott, one of those two could be the exact kind of center fielder that you need, kind of like Alec Thomas from last year with the Diamondbacks. Not great hitters, but make every play and annoy the hell out of the opposition because you just can't seem to find a hit once it's hit to center field. They've got all of these dudes. They're lacking the superstar. And I'm with you, T-Bone. I don't think they're, especially position player-wise, I don't think their development pipeline is broken. I think Nolan Gorman strikes out too much, which was always the fear. And I think Jordan Walker is a raw player, which was the scouting report on him whenever he got to the draft and he got into the Cardinal system. Could they have done a better job of masking those weaknesses? Absolutely. And I think that's something they have and should look into. And over time, hopefully they do things to improve upon that with future draft picks that come into the system with better roving instruction, better coaching down in the minor league system, and more emphasis on these things. I think the pitching is where their pipeline is really going to drop. That's where the bigger issues lie, and my hope is that they'll start investing in that in a more significant way. But as I've been watching this postseason this year, one of my biggest takeaways is, man, this team is not as far away as it feels.
Yeah.
The rotation is not as far away from these rotations that I'm watching right now as I felt like it probably was going into the regular season. The bullpen, I think, stacks up against most of these that I'm watching right now. Now, that won't be the case after they trade Helsley, but you can build a bullpen quickly. And I think this lineup, it's a really hard thing to do. It's the hardest thing to do, but if Jordan Walker, it clicks for him next year, and they add one more piece from the outside, man, by 2026, I know this sounds crazy right now, but it won't if they're able to do this. By 2026, you could be a contender again. That's how far it feels right now and how close it actually is.
I like what you're telling me. I do. It's great. I think they're really far away. And I think it's because it takes so much longer to get that superstar. I think right now you can't bank on a Jordan Walker developing into the superstar. Best case now is, as of right now, I think you should be just dreaming on him becoming one of these complementary pieces. Guys, it took them, I think it was about 6 years by the time you got to the end of that Holiday Carpenter era to get to the Goldschmidt and Arenado era. Why does it take so long? Well, they're not going to go out and sign one of these guys. It's going to get a huge contract. So they've got to wait for essentially one of these, what I would call a development team, like Cleveland, to be willing to move on from one of their superstars because they won't pay them. Well, that takes time. It's going to take years. And then you got to be willing to do it and give up what's necessary. Like, let's just be honest. They lucked into the Goalie Arenado scenario. Right. Arenado wanted to be here. Paul Goldschmidt, they gave up nothing outside of a great closer, apparently, in Luke Weaver. But it's going to take forever for them to find those guys. I think you're looking at probably about a 5-year window. If they would say, hey, we're going to kind of cut payroll, we're going to still try and be competitive, we've got Wilson Contreras, boom, there is star number 1. In fact, you could probably argue they could be able to cut some payroll and still go out and try and acquire star number 2 in a Vlad Guerrero this season. Problem is they won't give him the contract extension, so they won't make that kind of a trade. Henceforth, they are now stuck where they are basically back in that like 5 to 6 year window of searching for those superstars, and they don't just grow on trees, man. You got to wait wait those things out. They grow like bamboo. It takes a while.
Final thing on this before we get to Mike McKenna on the other side from the 314. Look, BK jumping the fence again. You said the Cardinals are far away. Now suddenly they aren't. Stick with a take instead of jumping around for show content. That's not what I'm doing here at all. I'm saying it feels like they're far away. It feels that way because of what we witnessed this year and because they're selling you on this notion that they have to cut payroll as significantly as they will. I don't think they're that far away. I don't. I think it feels that way because the thing that they're missing is the hardest thing to acquire. It's like when you're a hockey team, Alex, and you're missing the goalie. Well, that's easy to say that you're missing it. How do you acquire it? How do you find it? They don't just grow on trees. It's really hard. Teams like Toronto have been missing it for years. And then suddenly it works out sometimes. Like suddenly Edmonton, it just, for a postseason, works. Or Colorado, it clicks into place for one postseason. That's not a sustainable way to win, but for a postseason, it worked for them. That's what I'm saying about the Cardinals is they need to find that superstar. Maybe it's Vlad Guerrero Jr., maybe it's not going to happen, but that's why I think they're closer than it feels currently because they're missing the most difficult thing to find, but if they were somehow able to find it, I think suddenly you'd see things click into place way quicker than people are expecting. Coming up next, Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie. I want to talk to him about the step that we've seen from Joel Hofer's game this year, especially when it comes to playing the puck. Mike McKenna joins us next year on BK and Ferrario.
We want to hear from you. Text us at 314-399-9646 on the Air Comfort Service Heating, Cooling, and Insulation text line on 101 ESPN. wall-to-wall Blues coverage is right here. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN, and we're happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline for our weekly conversation with the one and only Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie. He's joining us this year on behalf of Macadoodles, and if you're watching us on YouTube right now, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL, you can see that fantastic hat that Mike is donning, supporting the great Macadoodles. Mike, we appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
Man, I'm feeling good. You know, it's Halloween's in full swing, going and doing the thing. Spent last night at Grant's Farm and got to listen on the radio, and life's good, man. I'm happy to be here and talk some Blues today.
Mike, you got a costume picked out already for Halloween? What are you going to be, my man?
Well, you know, this year, not as much. I have a couple go-tos in the bag. You know, sometimes I'll just pull out the corpse paint and go full black metal. And on other occasions, I'll just dig in deep and do my homemade Macho Man costume, brother. I went to Hulkster on us there. I screwed it up. But I went Hulkster there. Oh, yeah. You know, rise to the top, cream of the crop. So, yeah, I got one of those two in the bag.
Mike, somebody who has done so many Halloween parties during the NHL, is there anybody better than goaltender Halloween ideas? Because goalies always have their own personality, and I saw the picture already today, and I'm sure you did as well. Marc-Andre Fleury just went as McLovin. Like, anytime a goaltender has an opportunity to impress, they always seem to follow through.
Well, we're creative, right? Yeah. We're the art kids of the hockey world. I think that's the biggest reason why. You know what's really funny is that my wife and I thought we were just brilliant one year, and she found something that was going to work, and it was, you know, now picture this in your mind. One person was a deer and the other was headlights, deer and headlights, okay? Made the costumes, felt good about it. Well, guess what? Social media the same day, Roberto Luongo had done the same thing.
Oh.
I'm like, Blue, you're blowing me up, man. I thought we had a good costume here. So it was pretty funny, actually. We laughed about it. We ended up being teammates. I think it was like 2 years later, and had a good giggle over it. The deer in the headlights.
That's amazing.
I love it. Do you know what you're going with this
Do
year?
I? Yeah.
You guys have a family?
Katie's doing the League of Their Own outfits. So we got all the girls in the little baseball costumes.
I love it. Love it. Luca is going this year as Stitch. I do not believe, as far as I'm aware, I do not believe that we're doing anything dressing up wise.
You will.
I'm sure I'll find that out a day or two beforehand. Exactly what it is. All right, Mike, let's talk a little bit of Blues hockey with you, because last night, a really impressive win. 1-0 in overtime doesn't jump off the page as like, hey, that was the most exciting hockey game you'll ever see. It was a lot of fun to watch, though, as a fan. I want to get your expertise on the goalie that we saw last night. Joel Hofer, and Alex has mentioned this a couple of times, it seems like his puck movement skills have taken a step forward. You know more about this certainly than we do here. You've played the position professionally. What have you seen from Hofer in that regard so far this year?
Well, let me just first preface it by saying last night was the greatest hockey game I've ever watched in my life. And I don't know what you're talking about. It's a 0-0 tie with unbelievable goaltending at both ends. Hofer was incredible. Sorokin was just as good at the other end. I mean, could it get any better? You get the goalie, Joel Hofer, assisting on the game-winning goal. Like, guys, come on. This was the best game ever. But aside from that, Hofer's puck handling has always been one of the strongest traits of his game. I mean, guy's already potted a couple of goals at different levels, right? He's got one in the American League, another one beyond that. Last year, it's funny, when you looked at things categorically, if you went on a per-game basis, the only other goalie in the league that outpaces Joel Hofer in quick ups, like we saw in the goal, is Igor Shesterkin of the Rangers. That's it. Joel Hofer's second in the league with that. And I think what is interesting is that he's probably become more efficient with the puck since coming to the Blues and being up in the NHL full-time, because he's got a really good system already baked in. Binnington's one of the best puck handlers, I think, for my money in the league, too. So you've got these two guys who play similar. Hofer's probably a little bit more downfield than Binnington is at times. But I think they riff on each other. And I can say that, like, the more comfortable you get in the league, you're willing to make plays. And you just get patience with the puck. And that's what you see when Hofer gets it. Guys, they'll chuck it back to him, no problem. Like the Blues are not afraid to pass it back to Joel Hofer because he knows he's going to make a smart play with the puck.
They did that in overtime where they didn't have
Right.
the play in neutral zone. They just pushed it back so they could get them out there. And Mike, that's what came to mind last night for me because I recall that Minnesota Wild series where Husso started it in the playoffs. He wasn't getting the saves. They needed a spark. They went to Binnington, and Binnington disrupted Minnesota so much just with his puck handling ability. How much of a difference does that make for the players on the ice when the goaltender can step out of his net and kill a rim around?
Well, it's not just killing it. It's also for the D knowing that they're not going to take a big hit. And I tell you what, it's a great feeling as a goaltender to be able to take some of that load off your defenseman's shoulders and allow that first forechecker to come to you as the goaltender. So what that effectively does is open up lanes. Now you've got two outlets as a goalie, and really an effective puck handler as a goaltender doesn't need to make more than 10 or 15-foot passes most of the time. And being willing to get out and being adept at handling it, it allows your team to first kill the forecheck, but also, two, your breakout is so much cleaner. It's two passes and you're out. Marty Brodeur was the best ever at it for my money. He was so clean and efficient with it. And that's my mark of it. It's not just how far you can shoot the puck, how hard you can shoot it. It's the number of turnovers that you prevent from happening and the least number that you do yourself. So you want to put it in a good spot. Hofer, Binnington, both fabulous at that. And I think the Blues defensemen would agree that it takes away from the wear and tear on them. You're not eating those big hits.
Mike, one more goalie question for you. Is it easier for a team when you have two similar goaltenders to prep, whereas if you had two very different styles of goalies, your team has to prepare differently of how you play in front of them?
Yeah, for sure. When it comes to puck handling especially, I've been on teams where, and this might sound, I was a better puck handler than my goalie partner, especially younger in my career at times. Now, this wasn't every team, but it was some. And, your D would pull you over at some point. It would just be, oh, I'm glad you're in tonight. I just know I'm going to get hit with them in, and it's just reality. But, in today's world, most of the goalies can handle it pretty well. It's just someone like Hofer is, like, guys, he's next level. Like, you've got Brodeur, Marty Turco, Joel Hofer. I'm not kidding. Like, you're talking about kind of like your Rushmore of puck handlers. I think he's in that category, man. Wow. Like, I'm talking, this is a guy that might pot a couple of goals and be in, like, Grant Fuhr assist territory by the time he's done.
Wow. We're talking to Mike McKenna here on 101 ESPN, former NHL goalie. He joins us each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario. I do want to get your thoughts on the defense as well because, of course, Joel Hofer was amazing last night. Anytime you get a shutout, you first credit the goalie. You also have to credit the defense, though. And last night you had Suter that went up to that top pair. I didn't know what to expect this year out of Ryan Suter, just to be totally frank, Mike. I thought as a third-pair defenseman, great signing. It can't be that bad. He played top-pair minutes last night and didn't, in my opinion, look like he was out of place. What have you seen from him so far early in this season, and has it surprised you at all what they've been able to get out of him?
Well, last night did. I didn't expect to see Ryan Suter playing top-line minutes or top defensive pairing minutes this year. I thought he'd be a 5, 6, maybe even a 7th defenseman at times at the cost that the Blues were getting him. But what you're seeing really is that when you pair Ryan Suter with someone as capable as a Colton Parayko, man, he's still got it. Like, you don't lose your mental acumen for the game, And so I don't think we're going to see that every game. I think realistically Suter's going to play under 20 minutes. He's still going to be a stalwart probably on the penalty kill, but you're going to also see other players gain some ice time out of that. Guys, Broberg has been so good paired with Falk. Falk's just loving life right now because he's probably had some pressure taken off his shoulders, honestly. I think the way Broberg plays, it's allowed Justin Falk to free up a little bit. But, for Ryan Suter at this stage of his career, first off, you're loving life to be able to still play in the NHL, but to do it effectively like that, it's going to give you some confidence next to a guy like Colton Parayko. And even on the bottom pairings, I think he's been effective this year. It's probably where he'll end up most of the time. But this is why you bring in veteran players that have done it before. Whether he's your number 1 defenseman or your number 7, you're not going to get a complaint. He's just going to go out there and do his job.
So, Mike, it's an easy statement to say that this defense is better than last year, but when you look deeper and when you watch these games, what makes this defense as a whole better than last year?
Well, I think first, more than anything, I think the structure that Bannister has put in place as head coach of the Blues has allowed the D to be a little bit more effective, not just in the D zone, but also exiting it, also in the neutral zone, encouraging them to get their feet up ice, get the puck going downfield, get towards the other net, but doing it in a responsible way. And, someone like P.O. Joseph, he's had nice stints in the NHL previously. I really liked his game last night, and I think he's been an undercover addition to the team. But I think more than anything, they're just the responsibleness of playing, kind of more hybrid defensive zone. You're playing zone. It's a little hybrid between zone, man to man, but it's just giving them more structure and knowing where players are out in the neutral zone. And someone like Broberg, couple great strides. Boy, that helps. Again, Falk, he's not feeling the pressure of having to be the safety valve all the time. You've got a veteran like Suter in the mix who can do kind of anything that you need. And guys, let's not forget, Nick Leddy is going to get it together, man. He will. He will be an asset to the Blues. It's coming. It'll be there. So I do think they're a little bit deeper, but I think they've also got some structure from Bannister's system that's really helped.
Final question for Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, joins us weekly here on BK and Ferrario on behalf of Macadoodles. You've mentioned Philip Broberg a couple of times. He was the guy that we opened the show with today because of how impressive he's been so far this year. He's had at least 1 point in every game to start the season. First Blues defenseman to have a point in the first 5 games of the year since Alex Pietrangelo did that 7 years ago. Mike, I'm going to leave this open-ended, but how good is Philip Broberg?
There's a reason why he went as high as he did, 8th overall in the draft in 2019, is because there's a belief that he could be a number 1 defenseman in the NHL. When you go that high in a draft, that belief is there. Now, it's also 5 years ago, and he spent time in the American League. He's spent time up and down at the NHL level. I think what you're seeing is a maturation process of a player. And it really, Steve Ott last night, Blues associate head coach, had a great quote post-game and saying that this is really a credit to management, meaning Doug Armstrong, for going out and taking a gamble on Broberg. And the gamble wasn't in his ability. It was in the dollar figure attached to it. To go $4+ million to get a guy on an offer sheet. Well, I tell you what, man, a couple of years down the road, if that turns into getting this player on a long-term deal with your control as a restricted free agent, holy cow, man, that's found money. And that's a worthwhile gamble. So is he going to be a point a game in the NHL, guys? Listen, that's a tall task for any defenseman in the league. It is. But I'm just encouraged more so. I've seen Broberg play since he was, 20 years old in the American Hockey League. Okay, I saw him play those games. There's been a maturation to his game defensively. He's killing penalties now a little bit. Played over 22 minutes last night. When the player can play in all 3 situations on the ice, PP, PK, 5-on-5, man, now you're starting to get into that Victor Hedman territory, that dangerous 2 words, Alex Pietrangelo territory, okay? I'm encouraged by it, very much so for Broberg.
Mike, final one for me. We spent a lot of time talking goalie and defense, but I am curious on the offensive side. Do you see this offense as building towards something, or do you think this is kind of going to be an issue all season of their 5-on-5 offense struggling to find consistent scoring?
Well, look at the lineup a little bit right now, okay? You've got workman-like players. You do have a little bit of star power. I think it is going to be a little bit difficult for the Blues to just manufacture goals at 5-on-5. It was a little bit easier for them when the past several years the Blues just loved to live and die on the rush. And boy, that's a risky way to play hockey. Kind of transitioning to being more of a puck possession team in the offensive zone. That's where I think there could be some growth here for the Blues. I'm not sure they're just going to be able to turn the page, score goals at will, but I do think as they get more adept at controlling the puck below the goal line, going low to high like you saw several times last night. Schenn, Buchnevich, you saw it often last night. Jordan Kyrou had a great game. And by the way, he's been really good this year. All over the ice. I've been impressed by him. So I don't think the Blues are going to be a juggernaut offensively, but I do think there's going to be some growth as they learn to hang on to pucks and find players in soft areas and get better shots towards the net.
Mike, it's a Friday. That means this weekend, I'm going to be pouring myself something nice. I think I might go with some Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel this weekend. Nice. One of my personal favorites. It's getting to be that time of the year as well where you get a little bit of the hotter whiskeys coming out, given the season change. I will be going to Macadoodles when you guys open up for all of my fine whiskey needs. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing over at Macadoodles.
Well, I got something exciting today, and we're going to lock this in. We're going to be open November 15th. I'm saying it right now, so we have to do it. We have to do it. No way around it. We have to be open by then. So, if we don't, come find me. But I'll tell you what, here's the deal. You touched on it. I mean, you're starting to you get the winter, a little bit higher proof on your bourbons. We did a tequila tasting yesterday afternoon with some really high-end stuff that, I tell you what, man, the flavors that are coming out of the small tequila producers now, the Añejos and the Reposados, like, it's wild, man. Like, spirits have gone into a really artisanal, cool type of little area. And so, we're just getting our opening set ready. We're getting our wine ready. We're getting all our beer, tequila all set. And you're going to see some signage up at Bryan and Feisey Road in Dardenne Prairie. We're just north of the Page Extension. Grand opening is going to be a blast. We'll have some celebrities out there. We might even have a Clydesdale. So we're going to make it a lot of fun, guys. Unpretentious, come on in, have a good time. Tastings all day long.
Love it. Macadoodles is where it's at. Mike McKenna is the one and only that we have every single Friday. Former NHL goalie, gives us great analysis on the St. Louis Blues, and you're going to be able to find some great beer, some great wine, some great spirits over there at Macadoodles. Mike, thanks for the time as always, man. We'll talk with you again next week.
BK Ferrario, always a pleasure. Tanner, keep it going and back, buddy. Thanks, guys, for having me.
You're the best, man.
It's Mike McKenna. Appreciate his time as always, joining us here on 101 ESPN. If you missed any of our conversation with him, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
Coming up next, it's time for our NFL weekend look ahead. What's the game of the week? What's the upset of the week? We'll get to all of that here on BK and Ferrario.
Coverage of 101 ESPN is presented by Under Law Injury Lawyers. GetJim.com. Up-to-date info and breaking sports news first. All on the 101 ESPN app in your App Store or Google Play. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Neighbors hits weekend on high notes. I'm Bradford Bruns with your Sports Center update powered by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Last night downtown, Jake Neighbors picked an ideal time to etch his name on the score sheet. Number 63 registering goal number 1 of 2024-25 in OT as St. Louis silences Patrick Waugh's Islanders 1-0. Philip Broberg adds yet another assist. Joel Hofer makes 34 saves and STL currently owns 6 points entering tomorrow's match matchup versus Carolina. Saturday football homecoming edition. Mizzou battles Auburn. Afternoon action features Illinois, Michigan, Bama, Tennessee before Georgia visits top-ranked Texas. 2+ hours from now, NLCS play resumes. Los Angeles could close out New York behind Jack Flaherty. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Let's get into our NFL weekend look ahead, the matchup you're most looking forward to see, the upset you expect that we will be able to see on Sunday, and the biggest headline that's going to come out of the weekend. We'll get into all of that here as we go along with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. By the way, I haven't mentioned this today. Bradford Bruns doing a fantastic job for us back in the studio. He's got the updates all day long because we are broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. Let's get right into it. Alex, it's an interesting slate this week. It's much better than what it was a week ago in the NFL. What is the matchup that you're most excited to see on Sunday?
The Lions-Vikings. I don't think the Lions are frauds. Even without Aiden Hutchinson, I still think they're a really good team because they have so many weapons offensively. Defensively, it's going to be a struggle, but can they win shootout games? Maybe. I really am excited to see them go up against the Vikings because if they put up points against a Vikings team that everybody believes is one of the best in the NFL, I don't know how you can doubt Detroit. So that's my favorite game of the week.
Packers-Texans is a game for me. I mean, I think BK said this yesterday. They're probably the top two teams to watch in the NFL right now. They move the ball well.
From a watchability perspective.
From a watchability perspective. They move the ball well. Their quarterbacks have been playing well, especially Jordan Love coming back from injury. They can run the football. To me, that's going to be the best game. It's potentially a Super Bowl matchup. I don't think both those teams are getting there, but it could be. So, to me, that's the game.
That could be the Super Bowl matchup. I'm looking at what was the Super Bowl matchup from a year ago. Chiefs versus the 49ers. I'm starting to wonder if the Chiefs' offensive performance against the Saints was more about the Saints than it was about the Chiefs. Juju looked amazing. Kareem Hunt looked awesome. Patrick Mahomes played a really good game. His only interception in that one was the catch that Juju should have made in the end zone, and then suddenly a 320-pound man is running 40 yards down the field going in the other direction.
Though.
It was amazing to watch. Was that about the Chiefs? Like, have they actually figured stuff out, or was that the Saints defense, which looks terrible again last night against the Denver Broncos? I don't know. They've had a bye week to be able to figure things out post Rashee Rice, post Hollywood Brown. I want to see what they look like against this 49ers team that seemingly every week I see them in the third quarter and they're putting up crazy yardage numbers. They're up big, and then they lose. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. So Chiefs, 49ers, I think both have a real chance to make it to the Super Bowl again this year. I'm also not entirely sure that they're as good as I think that they are. So that's the game that I am most looking forward to see on Sunday. Alex, if you had to pick one upset this weekend, what are you going with?
Are we putting the criteria on this?
Typically, I like to say 3-point or more, given what this season has been, but you can take it whatever direction you like.
He's going to take like a 1 point.
No, I'm not.
I've seen this game before.
No. So my original thought was I was going to take Patriots-Jaguars and say Patriots win that one.
That's a huge upset, yeah.
Totally, but I'm very skeptical because Jacksonville's been in London and New England just got there. I asked because I'm taking the Dolphins. It's 3 points. I think the Dolphins beat the Colts. And I don't like the Dolphins. I don't think they're very good, but the Colts are making the dumbest decision they could and not starting Joe Flacco and going back to Anthony Richardson. They also don't have Jonathan Taylor. I don't like the Colts. Even that it's a home game, I would take the Dolphins covering that 3-point spread.
The Dolphins should throw the ball no more than 10 times in this game.
Yep.
I'm not kidding.
They should play YOLO.
The Colts defense is so bad against the run. I mean, so bad against the run. You've got Devon Achane, who is expected back this week. You also have Raheem Mostert, who was good in their last game as well. Just run the ball all day long. Get Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill going on end rounds as well. Just, man, run the ball all day. Run like a triple option, basically, all day. That would be my game plan. I think they could absolutely win that one. I'm really nervous about picking it for the 101 ESPN Pick'em Challenge. T-Bone, what's yours?
I am going to go to that London game. In fact, this is going to play into something later on here in this segment. I think the Pats beat the Jaguars. I think that Jaguars defense is terrible.
Agreed.
And I don't think I think Jacksonville's offense will keep them in this game. but I have no faith in that Jaguars defense. They've got to prepare for Drake May. I thought he looked okay at times in his debut. I think Drake May is going to have a breaking out game against Jacksonville in London. I think the Jaguars lose and they go to 1-6.
I've got two of them. One of them is actually against Alex's pick. I think the Seahawks have a real chance to be able to upset the Falcons. They're on the road. It's a big change in time zones. So, for T-Bone,
never mind.
that is something he certainly would not be selecting.
No chance.
Hey, that's why I took him, man.
Great pick today.
The game that I prefer, though, if you listen to our picks earlier, is the one that I picked, which is the Giants beating the Eagles at home. They're at home. They're a 3-point underdog. It's not a huge upset, but that means that Vegas thinks that they're 6 points worse in terms of neutral site. I don't feel that way at all, man. I think the Giants and Eagles are pretty similar in terms of their overall effectiveness this year. I'll take the Giants as my upset pick for the week. Alex, what's your overreaction Monday game?
The Jets are back after a big win against Pittsburgh. Can we just stop? Look, I picked the Jets. I think they're going to win. But it's not because the Jets are now this weapon that Aaron Rodgers got his best friend back and, I love my best friend. No, this is all about Pittsburgh ruining what they had going for them and starting the wrong quarterback. So the overreaction is going to be Aaron Rodgers is now ready to win with the Jets. Let's just stop. They're going to get their butts kicked next week, whomever they play. I don't care. They're going to win this one because Pittsburgh's just dumb with their decisions.
I mean, that's probably the one game that has it, but I'll give you another one where I could see there's a bit of an overreaction, and it goes to that Chiefs and 49ers game. I could see where if the 49ers win this one, people say, oh, yeah, they're definitely back. And depending how they play, that might be true, but we haven't seen them play a complete football game through the first 6 weeks. So I could see there being overreaction. I could also see there being overreaction if they lose, along with maybe some talk of the Chiefs of, maybe they don't need a wide receiver. No, they do need to upgrade that wide receiver room. I don't know if it's going to be a big overreaction, but I could see it becoming an overreaction game.
Mine combines two of the best games of the weekend. Packers, Texans, Lions, Vikings. I think what we will say coming out of this weekend is Packers are the favorite in the NFC. That'll be the overreaction for both of those games, right? Packers beat the Texans at home. Vikings end up losing at home against the Lions, and boom, now you've got NFC North, still the best division in football, but we knew that going into this weekend. That's not something new. Packers had some struggles early on. Jordan Love gets hurt, had that weird game down in Brazil. Packers after this weekend, if they beat the Texans head-to-head, and especially if they beat them handily, we will come out of this weekend saying, once again, the way that I viewed them going into the season, a Super Bowl favorite to come out of the NFC. Last thing here, biggest headline to come out of this weekend, Alex.
Nick Sirianni needs to be gone in Philly. I think the Giants beat Philly. I wish I didn't feel that way because you took them, and I'm really hoping that it doesn't go that way. But the Eagles are not a team that has playoff vibes. I know they're 3-2, but man, when you go into New York and you lose to a Giants team that has Daniel Jones as their quarterback, I don't know how anybody could be feeling good. And then you're coming off of the week, like we mentioned earlier, of Sirianni, going after some of the fans in Philly. The vibes with Philadelphia are going to be mashed after this weekend, and I think there's going to be talk headlines-wise about Philadelphia going in a different direction.
I like that one because I could see it, and it ties into mine. I mentioned that game in London. Jags leave Doug Peterson overseas. Doug Peterson is fired after the Jags lose to the Patriots and start the season 1-6.
2 firings after a week.
I could totally see it because, their owner came out, gave him a boost of confidence. I don't know how true that really is. And if they start 1-6 and the franchise quarterback looks like crap so far this year, Doug Peterson's seat is really hot.
I don't know how to feel about this game, but I'm going to go in this direction just because I think it would make for one hell of a headline. 49ers at a loss for answers against the Chiefs. Dude, I looked into this earlier this week. Kyle Shanahan has never defeated Andy Reid straight up. Any staff that Kyle Shanahan has been on, and he's been in the NFL for 20 years now, he's played him 7 times. He's 0-7 straight up against an Andy Reid coach team. That includes during the regular season a couple of years ago when the Chiefs scored, I think it was 44 points against the 49ers and just ran away with that one. And 2 Super Bowl victories in which the 49ers had a double-digit lead in the second half, losing both of those games in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. This is a potential Super Bowl matchup once again this season, and I think Kansas City, see how it goes. I think Kansas City has a real chance to be able to win this one, and if that happens, I think the statement coming out, 49ers would be 3-4, having lost again against the Chiefs, and there will be real questions of, did the last Super Bowl loss break them? Are they now so mentally fragile that they cannot continue as a real contender in the NFC?
Can I give you another one?
Go ahead.
Buffalo's best of the rest in the AFC. I think now that Amari Cooper's there, you're going to see that offense really open up. Shakir's back. You'll have Coleman. You'll have Amari Cooper now. Best of the rest, meaning the Chiefs are still superior, and then I think you're going to be talking Buffalo.
It's also possible if the other side of my game happens, that we look at it and say AFC's wide open. Ravens, Texans, Chiefs, Bills, throw them all into a bag, see who comes out. Yeah. I have no idea.
I like that Bills one. I think we're 2-3 weeks from that one coming potentially, because I just think it's going to take a week or two before Amari Cooper's fully implemented into that offense, learning a new system. Once he learns it, he has that big game. I can 100% see that headline coming out of a weekend.
I just think Tampa's going to give Baltimore a real run this Monday, and if the Chiefs don't look great against San Francisco and Houston loses to Green Bay, if Buffalo goes out there and showcases their offense now with Amari Cooper, I'm going to be talking about them as one of the best in the AFC.
Can't ask for a much better weekend on the football side of things. In the NFL slate, you've got a huge game in the noon slate with Texans versus Packers. You've got Lions versus Vikings, and then at 3 o'clock, Chiefs versus 49ers. Those are haymaker type of games right there. And then over in the college football slate, you've got like 4 or 5 top 25 matchups, including a couple in the SEC top 10 matchups going head-to-head. This is a great weekend slate. Do not go pumpkin patching this weekend. Do not go apple picking this weekend. This is the weekend to stay in front of your television screen from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Saturday, and then at least, at a minimum, from noon to 6 on Sunday. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. BK and Ferrario Rewind coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
The St. Louis Blues are back on ESPN.
Shoots, he scores!
Tomorrow, Blues and Hurricanes. Pre-game at 5, puck drop at 6.
The wait is over!
The quest for the Stanley Cup happens here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Blues fans, send us a pic of you repping your Blues gear, and you could be chosen as our Blues Fan of the Week and win a pair of tickets to a Blues game. No purchase necessary. Must be a resident of Missouri or Illinois. Get entered to be our Blues Fan of the Week now at 101ESPN.com. We're back to more exclusive Blues talk. 101 ESPN is live from the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Let's run it back with the Daily Rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom. Your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
From today's show, be sure to check out the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. And the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Alex, on the NHL side of things, we were all very happy with the way that the Blues were able to perform last night. We gave our credit where it is deserved, which is to Drew Bannister. He made a couple of lineup decisions that we were highly critical of yesterday. Hey, man, it worked out. Kapanen had a really good game for the Blues. I thought overall, I was happy to see him stick with his line combinations throughout, despite their lack of scoring. They did have some real opportunities, though. Stuck with them, ended up coming out with a win, 1-0 in overtime yesterday against the Islanders. Blues back in action tomorrow against the Carolina Hurricanes, a game that you'll hear right here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Pre-game at 5, puck drop at 6. Alex, what do you anticipate from the Blues against the Hurricanes? Not an easy matchup.
It's going to be very similar to last night's game. It's going to be, if you want to call it boring or exciting, however you view the hockey game, it's going to be tight because Carolina plays very similar to the New York Islanders. They're stingy in their own zone. They wait for you to make a mistake, and they pounce on it. They've got some offensive weapons. Seth Jarvis, Aho, Svechnikov. They've got some good players, but they also got even better goaltending in Frederik Andersen. So they're going to be coming off of a back-to-back because Carolina plays tonight, so that should be an opportunity for the Blues to pounce, but I'm expecting another tight hockey game like we just saw last night against them.
They've only played 2 games so far this year, so you are certainly more well-established in your chemistry than what they are.
They play in Pittsburgh tonight at 6 o'clock, so it's going to be a quick turnaround for them because it's a 6 o'clock game tomorrow.
I love watching Carolina play because of their offensive zone time. Like, it is suffocating, man. Good luck getting the puck away from them. I want to see how the Blues look in their own zone. Yep. That's something they've been better at this year than they have been in previous seasons. This is a real test for them in that regard. On the college football side of things, I'll start here. Mizzou takes on Auburn tomorrow for homecoming. I don't know what to make of this game. I have no real lean either direction. I think it will be close. That's one take. Another, I think Auburn gets dismissed because of their 2-4 record. I'm not sure they should. That offense has been putting up big-time yardage. Top 3 in the SEC in yards per attempt. Top 3 in the SEC in yards per carry. They have a receiver that's top 3 in the SEC in yards already on the season. They had real turnover problems earlier in the year, and in the last 2 games when they have limited the turnovers, they've struggled to convert in the red zone. You got to keep a team that is struggling down. Force turnovers, make them stop, get stops in the red zone. If you do that, you feel good about it. I need to see Brady cook in this one, man. They've got a really good run defense. You're going to have to connect on some deep shots. We've been saying it all year long. At some point, if this team is going to break through, it has to happen. Yep. Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, Marquise Johnson, it's time to step up. This is the game where it has to happen. I think Missouri wins. I think it's going to be really close. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that. T-Bone, tomorrow you're going to be in Champaign for Michigan versus the Illini. You've got Illinois in your pick-em this week as your 3-point play.
You don't like it.
You clearly believe in your Illini. How you feeling going into this one, man?
I'm not going to lie. I'm a little nervous. But to me, it just comes down to, can they stop the Michigan run game? Michigan can't throw a forward pass. They play like Iowa this year. Their defense is good. I mean, you mentioned, I think Illinois and Michigan's defense are comparable. To me, it comes down to who can establish the run. Because if Michigan can run the football, then Illinois is going to have a tough time stopping them and getting off of the field. If Illinois can establish somewhat of a threat with the running game, it just opens up the offense. You're not one-dimensional. You're not just having to rely on Altmaier to pass the ball. That's where the football game is going to be won. Who establishes the run? It's the best Brett Bielema-style football game you could imagine for Big Ten football.
Quickly, we've got about a minute left. Texas versus Georgia, the biggest game of the weekend. A top 5 matchup. Who you got in this one, Alex?
Texas.
I'm going Texas as well.
I've got Texas in our pick'em. I'm going to stick with them here. Alabama versus Tennessee. Alabama's a 3-point road favorite. Alex, who you got in this one?
Tennessee.
Bama blowout.
I've got Bama as well. I think they win big. I think they look a lot better in this one than they have in the last few weeks. Those are the biggest college football games on this week's slate.
Auburn over Mizzou.
Yeah, Auburn over Mizzou.
Yeah. Do you guys really have that?
I think so.
No, I got
Are you
Mizzou.
talking about taking the points or winning straight?
Points.
I think they go into Columbia and surprise Tigers.
I hope that's not the case. For Alex Ferrario,
Michigan over Illinois.
I'm Brandon Kiley. Alex will have the show with Chris Kerber on Monday. I will be on the morning show. Tanner will be enjoying a well-deserved day off. Huge shout-out to Bradford Bruns. Thanks to him for helping us out in the studio today. We will talk to you guys next week. Enjoy the great weekend. Till then, the Fast Lane's coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
We want your insight and honest opinions on the world of sports. Use the mic drop feature in the 101 ESPN app. Say it and send it to us. Now in the App Store or Google Play.